Adequate notice of this meeting of the zoning board of adjustment was sent by email to the Asbury Park Press and the Co-Stars, our official newspaper, and posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building. Roll call, Mr. Ross?
Here.
Mr. Gregg?
Here.
Mr. Almeida?
Present.
Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Malengo?
Here.
Ms. Keats? Here. Mr. Diorio?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Lubin?
Yes.
Great. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 26th meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Mr. Ross?
Abstain.
Mr. Gregg?
Yes.
Mr. Almeida?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Malengo?
Yes.
Ms. Keats?
Yes.
Mr. Diorio?
Yes.
Next, we have the resolution approving the application of Kristen Sichimura, 103 9th Avenue, Unit 8.
Mr. Chairman, there were a couple of conditions on here, so I'll just go over this with the board. This was an approval for the construction of an addition to an existing residential structure on a lot which already contains other units within the condominium association, Ocean Breeze. And the conditions of approval included the inclusion of a note confirming that there should be no enclosure of the two rooftop decks absent further formal approval of the zoning board. We basically had compliance that the floor area ratio shall be a conforming 47%, and the building, maximum building height, I think there was some confusion, for a portion of the building as referenced on the plans is going to be 35 feet 5 inches. And we also had, now one we're going to have to do, I put in here inclusion of a note confirming that the two first floor bedrooms shall be consolidated into one bedroom. I want to come back to that one. I think there was a discussion at the first hearing, but that's when we were sort of unsure of what the FAR was, and then we came back, so let me just come back to that. And then there's no cover over that second floor deck or that top floor deck. We also had that they anticipate using the existing foundation, but you all had said as part of your finding, if it turns out that they can't, they can go in and put a new foundation in, but it has to be the exact same spot. And we also had, there was some discussion about some aesthetic improvements, whether it was siding or awnings and things like that, shutters, and basically the applicant said they would do it, but for a variety of reasons, you all said that not a condition of the approval, so that says that. We wanted the borough representative to confirm and verify the setbacks for the awnings and make sure that there's no violation of municipal right-of-way, and no further expansion or intensification or modification of the structure absent further formal approval. And then this was just sort of a unique one on this one. The applicant's representative shall officially communicate with the association so as to advise as to the floor area ratio calculation methodology. Remember, that was a whole big issue. And we said the said communication shall furthermore indicate that absent further direction modification of the governing body or absent further direction from the zoning board or further interpretation, the future floor area ratio calculations for individual units in an association complex shall be calculated based upon the entire development site as utilized, as we did utilize in this application. Thus, the association residents should be made aware of the impacts of any floor area ratio calculation method may have on future development applications. That is, the association and the association residents should be made aware of the fact that given the nature of the association, a communal calculation is going to be utilized. And I think that was the gist. And am I assuming Mr. Mirabelli, the applicant's attorney, gave me the missing technical information, and I guess the only thing that I would need is, am I right to assume that you are not requiring those two bedrooms to be converted to one bedroom, or was that anything that we did as part of the, when we were unsure of what the FAR was?
We don't decide that she said that's what she's going to do. I don't know.
They're going to be converted to one.
Okay, so we keep that in, got it. And the other attorney did not have any objections to that, so. So, Mr. Chairman, if that's acceptable, we can adopt that as modified.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Ross? Mr. Gay?
Yes.
Mr. Almeida?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Malongo?
Abstain.
Ms. Deeds?
Yes.
Mr. Diori?
Yes.
Next is the resolution approving the application of Donald and Kelly Christensen, 519 15th Avenue.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was an approval from last month's meeting, and it involved demolition of an existing single-family structure, retention of an existing detached garage, and construction of a new single-family home. And you'll recall that your findings were basically that this was a pretty soft ask, and it was, you publicly stated you appreciated the reasonableness of the request, and the conditions of approval included note confirming that the air conditioning condenser is going to be located in a zoning compliant location, landscaping, and the landscaping shall be perpetually maintained. A note confirming that the generator will be in a zoning compliant location, and that you remember one neighbor sort of had a concern and wanted to make sure that there was going to be on-silt fencing during the construction process. So we have that. And we also have the structure and garage distance shall be further reviewed and verified by the municipal construction office so as to confirm the absence of any adverse health and safety issues, and good faith efforts for putting electrical utilities underground, and that the applicant, as is standard, the applicant complies with the on-site construction requirements that we, not related to the zoning board, but our borough has in terms of porta potties, hours of operation for construction, all those things. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's acceptable to the board, that can be adopted if that is the pleasure of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Ross? Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Almeida?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Malongo?
Yes.
Ms. Deeds?
Yes.
Mr. Diori?
Yes.
Move on to applications.
Past business that we need to take care of?
Unless you want to talk about the extension request now or at the end?
Let's take care of the extension right now.
You wanna sit down? So I circulated a letter to all of you from Tony Almeida, 419 10th Avenue, requesting an extension and possibly a...
Yes, just an extension.
So an extension of approvals for a 3-year extension. Did everyone have time to review the letter? Did you read it? Is there any objection from the board for granting the extension?
Just the only question that I have is 3 years going to be our standard, or is that outside? I know we've asked between 2, make them come back. Can we just go to 3 if we chose, and where things are right now? A lot of people who previously approved are departing on their construction, and I don't know if 2 years is adequate time. So should we add that to our list of things for the council? Will we allow the first request to be 3 years?
I don't think that's actually in writing in the ordinance.
There's no ordinance around this? 'Cause I know
I think
in the
it's
past
our
always been
discretion. And actually, can I just say one thing? Just for the record, the applicant was an applicant and is now on the board. And so just for record-keeping and record-keeping purposes, there's no prohibition about an applicant being on the board. I mean, there's certain protocols that we try to observe, and we have. But the bottom line is, we can't treat the applicant, and the main bottom line is, you all are volunteers, and we don't penalize a volunteer who serves his or her time on the board. You can't say, hey, we can't hear your application. And unlike when there's a conflict in municipal court, they will sometimes trade it over to the other, a nearby town. We don't have the luxury of doing that. So the bottom line is, if there's ever an application that we have one of our board members, and this, this is just an extension, but for record-keeping purposes, I think it's important to note that we can't treat the applicant/board member any better than every other applicant or any worse. So that having been said, I'm sorry. So there is no statutory. We have historically said 2 years, and if they want another one, they come back. But there's no statute that says it has to be,
Okay, so we'll handle that on a case-by-case
Yeah.
basis. So in this case, it's 3-year extension.
And it's this one, it's, the houses have been built, it's just the amenities of the property that an
Okay,
extension would be for.
yep, sounds good.
So, are we doing 2 or 3 years?
Good.
Right, do we have a motion to approve the extension?
I'll make that motion. Second.
Okay, Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Gregg?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Malengo?
Yes.
Ms. Deep?
Yes.
Mr. Diorio?
Yes.
And then I'll just prepare the resolution that you have.
Yes, and again, just for the record, board member slash applicant, Mr. Almeida had stepped down and to recuse himself from this, and now we can bring him back.
So the first application, we're going to go in the same order that you published, April?
Yep.
205 13th Avenue, Ford Street, LLC.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, as the applicant comes forward, just a couple of real quick things. Is there anyone here who had any questions or comments regarding the sufficiency of the notice? Okay, we don't see any, and so we're going to say that the board secretary and I reviewed the notice and found everything to be in order. And what we'll do is we'll mark into the record what we as a board have before us. So A1 will be the development application, and that's dated October 26, 2022. And then A2 will be the Borough of Belmar application checklist. And A3 will be the Borough of Belmar minor land use zoning permit, and that is dated September 13, 2022 and September 19, 2022 with an attachment. And then A4, we're going to say is the plans, and that is prepared by Primavano Architecture, and it is dated September 13, 2022, consisting of 2 sheets. And before we turn it over to the applicant, Ted Bianchi is our zoning officer and our construction official and our friend. So what we're going to do is we're going to swear him in. Ted, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, to help you God? Thank you. All right, good evening. If you could enter your appearance.
Sure. Joseph Permiano, architect for the applicant.
And Priviano is spelled,
Primiano.
okay.
Ina Schaefer, I am the owner of Ford Street LLC.
Okay, and spell Ina, please.
INN.
And spell Schaefer.
SCHAEFER.
All right. And if you could just both raise your right hands, and do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
I do.
Okay. And Mr. Permiano, momentarily you can go over your architectural qualifications, but just Ms. Schaefer, you've been sworn. Can I just ask a couple real quick questions to get the ball rolling here? So the property is 205 13th Avenue, correct?
Yes.
And are you the owner of that property?
Yes.
And how long have you owned it roughly?
2 years.
Okay. And is there a single-family home at that property?
Yes.
And do you live there?
Yes.
Okay. And is there an existing garage right now?
No.
Okay. And so why don't you or your architect talk about what you're proposing to do and the details and the variance relief that you need?
Okay. I am currently licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm licensed in several other states. I have testified before numerous boards throughout New Jersey, several townships in this area. This is my first time before this board.
All right. Mr. Chairman, is the board okay with the qualifications?
Yes,
of
we
the applicant?
certainly accept those qualifications.
Thank you. So, we are here tonight so the applicant can construct a detached garage in the rear yard. Currently, there's no garage on the property, and there's no storage on the property. There's no shed, there's no outdoor, anything in the backyard for any kind of storage, for a vehicle or for a lawnmower, any of that sort. The applicant bought the property several years ago. It was a dilapidated piece of property. It was in disrepair, and the applicant spent a lot of time and money and effort to restore the house and pretty much remodel it inside and out. They spent a lot of time on that and wanted to just make something, improve it and beautify that neighborhood and that area there. As part of that, though, there is, they lack storage. That the house has, living space, but there's no storage for any of their, accessories and stuff like that. So what we were proposing is a 12 by 20 detached garage in the back left corner of the property. The garage would have a storage loft above it, because with a vehicle in the garage, the vehicle would take up pretty much the entire garage bay. So the proposal was to put a storage space above the garage. It's short, it's only about 7 feet, because we need the height in the garage for the door and the door tracks and everything. And the nature of such, when we did that, provided a flat roof in order to comply with the ordinance, which maximizes the detached structures at 18 feet. In order to get the inside room, that created a flat roof. The applicant would like to utilize that roof for just a hangout space. We show that on the second sheet of our drawings. So tonight we are asking for, there are 4 variance criteria that we're asking relief from. I'll explain those. So the first one was for maximum building coverage. So what's allowed in this zone, which is the R50 zone, what's allowed is 30%. Currently, the applicant is at 29.44 and is proposing the.
I'm sorry, 29.44?
29.44.
Got it.
That's correct, that's existing. And the applicant is proposing to go to 34.24. That's for building coverage. So that is one of the variances that we are requesting. As part of that, the applicant is removing their wood deck that's currently in the backyard. It's about the size of the garage. They are going to remove that to the grass open area that they have in where the garage is going. They are going to transfer that and have the grass area where the deck currently is to kind of offset that, so they still have somewhat of a usable backyard. The other part of that is typically you'd have a coverage requirement because a lot of times it's due to runoff and water conditions. So by limiting the building coverage and the lot coverage, you're reducing the amount of water runoff that can potentially go to neighbors' properties and to out to the street. So as part of this application, the owner is requesting to remove the driveway and install a new permeable paver driveway, which would let water pass through the driveway. That reduces a lot of the stormwater runoff out to the street and then any potential into the neighbor's yard. And by doing so, that actually allows for a 50% reduction in the coverage numbers. The issue, the other variance that comes up is that the applicant has an existing 16-foot wide driveway. The applicant would like to replace the driveway in the same exact location that it's at with the permeable pavers, but as such, I believe a driveway is only allowed to be 10 feet. So because it's existing at 16 feet, once we touch it, we replace it, we then trigger a new variance because we're 6 feet over that width. So that's the second variance that we're requesting. The third variance is, it says garages are for storage of motor vehicles in which no occupation is carried on. I'm not sure on the intent of the definition or that particular ordinance, but I'm assuming that it's to prevent somebody from really making that garage a second dwelling or a living space, or making it some kind of habitable space. I would assume that the deck could potentially be classified in that. I believe that's why the zoning officer wrote that in the variances. But again, the garage is to be used for storage. There is no intent for the applicant to make that a habitable dwelling or a bathroom or a habitable space or rent it out. It's simply for vehicle storage and personal storage. And then the last variance is for deck projections. And I guess decks are allowed to go into the rear yard a certain amount. I believe it's 11 feet from the principal structure. There's really no ordinance. I guess this could kind of count, but the deck is on top of the roof. So in the nature where we have to be 10 feet away from the house with the garage. So it just happens that you're by staying 10 feet or more away from the house with the garage, in essence, you're now more than 11 feet from the back of the house with the deck. So that then triggers that additional variance. I did kind of look at some aerial images of the neighborhood, and I just wanted to give the board some numbers on. I looked at the block that this particular property sits in, and I looked at 8 surrounding blocks in each direction, northeast, southwest, kind of like a tic-tac-toe board, and the applicant's property would be that center square. And what I did was I found that on average there was about 22 to 28 homes in each block, ranging from about 3 back houses to about 10 back buildings, I should say. And that averaged out to about 222 houses in that 9-block area with about 64 back buildings. So I wanted to show the board that it's 28.8% of the lots do have back buildings. Now, they could be garages, they could be pool houses, they could be accessory buildings. I don't know the nature of each one of them, but they were back buildings. Some of them were second dwellings, I believe. I did not count any of the small sheds or anything like that, but I was trying to show the board that there are quite a bit of buildings in the back of a lot of these properties. So I don't think that there would be that much out of character that there's a building in the back of this property. The property directly to the east has a small, I believe, little dwelling in the back space. The property just southwest of the applicant's property also has a back building. So there are other back buildings in this area. Whether or not they have the exact criteria as what we're proposing, I don't know, but they are detached structures in the back. I also want to let the board know that there's no trees that are coming out as part of this application. It's just grass in that area. There's currently a 6-foot-high board-on-board fence that runs around the entire backyard and along the driveway. So there is good privacy on both sides of the fence there, especially with regards to that driveway widening. That existing fence is right on that property line. I do have pictures if anyone would like to see the area of that current area or current picture of what the house looks like now or what the house used to look like. I can pass those around.
All right, so we're going to mark this as A5, and what is A5?
So I can show you. So A5 is going to be a packet of photos. It's 8 photos. It was taken by the applicant today, so these photos are current. None of the photos have been modified.
All right, so we're going to, here, why don't you give them to April, and we're going to mark, are they all packages?
They're all the same.
Great, all right, why don't you give some to the board, and we just do one for April. So I'm just going to mark this collectively A5, and we'll go A, B, C, D, E, all the way through. And I guess why don't you leave, if you have another, just leave it on the back chair there in case
I'll-
it's,
I can put, after I go through them, I can put this on.
got it, in case anyone from the
Yep.
public wants to see it. All right, and then what you're now you're handing in A6.
A6 is going to be a picture of
Of that.
the proposed, this is what the house looks like now.
All right, so A6 is a picture of the existing home taken by,
That was taken by myself about, I'm going to say, 4 months ago.
okay, and so do you testify that it's an accurate depiction of what exists on the site today?
That is correct.
Thank you.
The next exhibit
A7,
is going to be the existing dwelling when they purchased it several years ago.
photo of existing dwelling when purchased several years ago, taken by,
Taken by myself, don't know the exact date, but again, probably 3 years ago.
all right, so you can testify that this was an accurate depiction of what existed 2.5, 3 years ago?
Yes.
Got it.
Again, the intent was just to show, with the existing photo and the proposed, and the current photo, this is to show that, you know, what the applicant did to the property. They certainly wanted to do something nice. They spent a lot of money, a lot of effort on that, putting all new materials, new guards, new handrails, new siding, new windows, inside and out, completely redone. They, you know, any of the grass areas, fencing, everything was repaired and improved upon. The intent with the garage is also to, everything's gonna be matching, siding will be matching, colors will be matching, handrails, everything is so it looks like it was, you know, it's a matching architectural structure to the house. And then the photos that I submitted, the first one is a picture looking towards the backyard. The garage would be off to the left in that photo. Same image with the second one, it's just looking, just a little wider angle. The garage would be off to the left. The deck that's in that photo, which has also been redone and is very nice. The applicant is removing that deck in hopes of getting an approval. They want to reduce, you know, that overall footprint in their backyard, and they were willing to get rid of that deck as part of this application. Third image is just a clear shot of where the garage is going. Fourth image showing a little piece of the existing driveway, again looking down the side yard. Next image is showing the vehicles in the driveway. You can see that the driveway goes from the existing board-on-board fence across to the existing house. Another image of the existing driveway. And then the second to last image is standing, this is where the garage would be. We'd be in the garage looking out towards the street. And the final image was standing in the client's backyard facing east, looking towards the ocean, which is where, again, the garage would be installed. I also, just so the board has an understanding of the parking requirements, right now there are, this driveway permits 3 vehicles to be parked in the driveway. The ordinance requires for a 4-bedroom or larger house, which this is, that you have at least 3 driveway parking spaces. This would create a 4th parking space, therefore reducing some of the parking that's taking place on the street, just getting another vehicle off, and they'd be able to now park 4 vehicles on their property. The board has any questions?
You're done with your presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or presentation? Okay, I'd like to open up for board questions. We'll start. Yep.
Okay. The question I had was concerning the rooftop deck and the hot tub on top of the garage, and its proximity to your neighbors. Would you like to address those issues? It seems that based on the reason for the garage, a rooftop deck and hot tub were not part of the reasons you were building the garage?
It was part of the reason, you know, the client certainly would like an additional, you know, space to just, you know, gather at and have a hot tub up there, just a little hangout space. It's kind of further back, so, you know, there's a little bit of less of a, you know, unobstructed view towards the water from up there.
But also unobstructed views of their neighbors in the back.
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
And I'm sensitive to that, because we live in a congested town, and we're on top of each other to begin with. And, you know, adding a rooftop deck with a hot tub, you're gonna be using, have no problem with the garage. So,
Yeah.
those are my comments.
Okay.
Questions?
Well, my question was, what was the purpose, if the purpose of the garage was for storage,
Right.
why add a rooftop deck and a hot tub? That was my question.
Gotcha, okay. Ms. Deeds?
No, I think I have, I don't have any additional I actually have one question. Is the existing width of the garage now that 16.72, or is it,
The driveway.
I'm sorry, the driveway 16, that's the existing width of it at the moment?
Yes, yeah, the driveway goes from the property line to the existing house. Yes.
Okay. So while doing the proposed, what is the purpose for maintaining it? I know why you're changing it for the pervious pavers, but is there a reason, you're not getting additional cars, is there a reason that you would take up all that space with the pavers as opposed to moving that 6 feet and having grass or something there?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, you know, some of it would be a maintenance, you know, issue just to have several feet of grass on the side. Certainly just easier to have that existing driveway like that, going up to the fence, going up to the house. Certainly it gives them a little bit more flexibility on positioning of the cars. It's not wide enough to get 2 cars side by side, but it just does make it a little easier, kind of navigating through into the back.
Okay, that was really my only question, thank you.
Mr. Malongo?
Just one question, I think my other board members have answered a couple of my questions. So you're taking the deck down in the backyard, I'm assuming you're trying to replace the deck on the garage, because you're losing the deck in the yard?
Yes.
And you haven't considered going for more coverage to put a patio in the yard to get that hot tub down in the backyard for privacy?
It's, at the current moment, no. But, I mean, if the board is seeing, you know, is maybe leaning towards that, it might be a better solution to have a higher lot coverage and maybe reduce a privacy issue, then I'm sure I can talk to the applicant and see if they would be willing to, you know, make a change.
Okay, no further questions.
I'm not sure if the hot tub was on the ground, whether that counts for the lot coverage, because I think it would be a temporary structure.
It counts.
It does count as coverage, okay, very good. When you were doing your design, did you contemplate any designs that had, instead of a flat roof, a more sloped roof, or with a deck cut in? I mean, you're asking for a three-level garage here, and we don't have too many of those in town, honestly. Typically, it's a 2-level garage. I understand the comment about wanting loft for storage, and I truly believe if you say you're going to use it for storage, you're going to use it for storage, but future owners of the home might use that as a guest room. So there is definitely a concern with the design that's happening here in terms of it being beyond. So have you considered alternative design that we can have a conversation on?
So by changing the roof to a pitched roof, it then pretty much eliminates a lot of that storage space, because the garage is only 12 feet wide, so by the time you do a pitched roof or a gable roof or a hip roof, there's almost no storage
The
space.
square footage would remain the same. You're right that it might not be able to store up to the 7 feet, but you certainly would have the same square footage that you're looking to build in that what you're calling the loft area right now.
That's correct, yeah. You'd only have some storage in the middle. And we kept it, that storage space is only 7 feet.
All right, so my question is though, did you consider alternative design that didn't incorporate a flat roof?
We explored that, but it didn't give enough storage space.
Understood. I have one more question. Mr. O'Neill.
Does the current dwelling have a basement?
It does.
Accessible from inside the house?
It is accessible, yes. It's a short basement. It's only, I think, about 6 feet tall.
Is it accessible from inside the house?
It is accessible
So
from
the house has storage?
you can use the basement for some storage.
Is it safe to assume that there's 27 to 28 steps to get to the top of this roof? Not that?
That's probably about right, yes. I think we had a landing like mid-span, but there are code requirements. You can't have a straight stair more than 12 feet tall.
That's a lot of steps to get up to use a hot tub and then come down wet. Fence height on that top roof? 54-inch pool code, can you see through it?
Well, no, the guard only needs to be 3 feet because you only need a 4-foot guard if you're trying to get into that.
So then the structure is actually taller than 18 feet?
To the top of the guard would be 21. The roof is at 18 feet.
Heat and air condition
So
inside?
hold on. I don't mean to interrupt, but that's important. Ted, would you know if the height of the rail counts to the height of the structure itself, or if it's 18 feet to the flat roof, I'm going 3 more feet with the rail, is this really requesting 21 feet?
I think we count on accessory structure, it doesn't count on principal structure. There's certain things you can elevate higher than 35 feet.
Okay, so 21 feet is the calculation, or 18?
I would have to research that.
Okay.
I haven't run into that.
Just to confirm, heat and air condition in that loft area?
I'm sure the garage and that space would be climate controlled for storage
So
purposes.
you're asking for heat and air conditioning in the
Yes.
loft also?
And water.
That's
And I have no further questions.
Could you, for me, calculate roughly the loss of storage where you put in a roof over top of the garage? How much storage would you actually lose in square feet?
Well, it's not that it's a square footage loss because it would be, you'd have, let's say, a triangle or a pyramid at that level.
Let's say usable square feet, because at some point when it's 3 feet, you
One
can't.
third. typically.
1/3, and what's the square footage of the garage?
It was 240 square feet.
So if you could gain 112 square feet, that would be everything that you lost. Would that be true? I'm looking at the stairs.
What do you mean
The stairs are impervious coverage. So you could build a garage wider by 7 feet and longer by about 16 feet where the stairs are. That could all become storage, ground level storage, and you wouldn't have to drag your lawnmower up the stairs.
Yeah, I get that, and I don't, sometimes when we have these discussions between, the applicant, it's, we're trying to minimize some of those variances, and certainly if we went wider with the garage, we're now, it's not just the lot coverage issue, but it's also the building coverage issue that's.
You already are wider with the stairs. Ted, wouldn't that be true? The stairs are 100% impervious coverage?
Yeah, they would count as lot coverage.
We're
So
not,
they're already counted in.
but we're not over on the lot coverage, we're over on the building coverage.
What he's saying is you could trade the coverage of the steps for more square footage
Of
in the
storage.
first level of the garage.
You'd have a
Because you wouldn't need the staircases,
I-
or it could be an interior staircase.
I'm sure that's an option, sure, as long as the board understands that the building coverage number, which is the variance that we're asking relief from, it would increase.
It doesn't increase. The stairs are building coverage.
Stairs would be lot coverage.
Stairs are
Anything on
lot.
the roof is building coverage.
Yeah, the stairs are not counted, so again, the lot coverage, we're conforming with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
anytime so if we increase that roof, now we're increasing the building coverage, which is the variance that we're asking for. So again, we were trying to keep that to a minimum, you know, and obviously, I mean, we're not gonna put the lawnmower up on that lawn space, but yes, I do understand your point. And, you know, the applicant, I'm sure, would certainly agree that, you know, if you guys wanted a deed restriction put on this property, that space cannot be used for habitable space or rented out, it's not a problem. That's not the intent here.
I can see a slightly wider, longer garage and with an A roof, and it suits the lot much better than putting somebody in a hot tub 18 feet in the air. Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. With that suggestion, though, with the applicant, I mean, they were removing their entire deck, you know.
Leave the deck.
Leave the deck, okay?
Mr. Ross?
You know, same kind of questions along that line, is trying to get some storage that's practical for where you store in a garage on the ground level instead of hiking up those steps. I think that might be a good solution, is, you know, with utility closet off to the side where there's steps on it. That's my only, I have no questions, that's just an observation.
As the board members asked questions, one thing, you had mentioned that you were planning on having it be conditioned space. Does that trigger a variance, Ted, if you're requesting that the garage have heat and air conditioning installed on it?
No. You can put heat in a garage. You can't have any plumbing in there, but you can put heat. You can put a gas line back there.
And air also?
There's nothing that says you can't do that.
And where would the HVAC be located? Because I don't see that on the plan.
I'm sorry.
I don't see where the condenser or HVAC would be positioned if you are going to be providing heat and or air conditioning.
Yes, if it's heat only, we wouldn't need a condenser. It would probably just be a radiant heater in the garage. If they were going to add air conditioning, which I'm not sure if it would need air conditioning, but yes, it would need a condenser somewhere if that was the case. Or we would do like a P-TAC unit, which is...
Okay. We would just make it, you know, would have to be a compliant location that doesn't interfere with the setback.
Yeah, most likely it would be a P-TAC if that was the case, which is a packaged terminal unit, which is self-contained.
Is there any more board questions?
Yeah.
I just had a question
Yes.
about water.
Sure.
Is there going to be water in the building?
No.
Great, but with your plan for a hot tub, are you going to take buckets to fill up the hot tub?
Well, I mean, the hot tub, they'd have to run a hose up there, but I mean, the hot tub typically is only changed, you know, a few times a year. I mean,
Okay, no,
again,
just one.
they're gonna have some difficulties dealing with this, but, you know,
Okay.
yeah, there's no pipes being run out to that garage.
Okay.
We're going to close the board question section and open it up to the public. Anyone here from the public wants to ask questions regarding this application? This is a good time to raise your hand and come to the microphone. Seeing none, we'll close the public question and move to board comments. And we'll go in the same order that we just did.
Yeah, my comment was concerning the privacy issue, and basically your objective was storage, and I think you went, you know, you added some things that weren't related to storage, the rooftop deck and the hot tub. Those are my comments.
Ms. Stevens.
I would agree. I think that and I appreciate you looking to remove the back patio, but in terms of the privacy and really not interfering with your neighbors, having that hot tub on top of that garage I think it's more of a detriment to do that, and a negative impact on your neighbors. And so I don't know if you're looking for suggestions, but what was made earlier is keeping what you have within the walls, and I don't have a problem. You know, I have the same storage problem, and we have the 6 foot, my husband's, it's actually 5.5 feet, my husband's 6'4", so I get that, but that's what we have for storage as well. So having that storage is, I have less of a problem with, but really it is the rooftop deck that I have a problem with.
And Ms. Dietz, Mr. Milano.
Yes, I had the same thoughts about that. I don't have a problem with the garage. I do think a regular roof on the garage would look better, and if you had to leave the deck and put the hot tub on the deck, it'd probably be a better situation for your neighbors. So that would be my comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Milano. Along the same lines, to repeat, variances that we grant are permanent to the property, not to the current ownership. So, again, it's your intent to use that second level as storage. A future owner might find that to be a nice guest bedroom. So I have concern there. We have approved two-level garages where the car is planned on the first level and then loft and storage on the second level, but then not a flat roof and a hot tub on top of that. So that's where it starts getting into a zone that, I've been doing this for 10 years, and I haven't seen one request to try to build in that manner. I do have a big concern with the hot tub being on the third level there. And so, this is not an easy ask that I'm expecting the board to approve. So, with that, Mr. Garmini.
In concurrence with the rest of the board members, I would like to say that it appears that you kept the existing structure that was there and renovated it in its entirety, and it's beautiful. And I think that with some modifications to the plans, you can get all the things, or almost all the things you're looking for, and a better fit, probably for your use and for your enjoyment, as well as privacy for your neighbors.
Mr. Craig.
I feel pretty much the same way. What I would like to see there would be a garage with an A roof and wider than, wider by the width of that staircase. It would give you the extra storage ground level. The storage you have in your basement. Garage is really meant for the storage of a car, and it looks like this is going well beyond that with the room above the garage is, when you have the A roof and a net maximum of 18 feet high, you could get enough storage there and adding width to it, you'd have as much as you have. If you're really coming here for storage and a place for a car, you can do it a different way without putting that flat roof so high over top of your neighbors, not over top of your neighbors, but overlooking your neighbors. It would be, if it comes to a vote, it would be my intention to vote.
Mr. Ross.
I have the same feelings as the rest of the board. I have nothing really new to add.
I apologize to our board members over here. We should have continued on with the questions and comments to you gentlemen. So if you would please, it'd be a good time to make comments if you had any.
I'm in 100% agreement with what you're saying. To me, it's concerning to have the hot tub on the rooftop deck. To me, it's having a beer and a glass of wine in the hot tub, 18 stairs, 3-foot railing, I'm 6'4". Not happening.
Okay. And
I'm not stalling, I agree with it. No, I'm in agreement.
And I'll be more cognizant when in the question period. I was focused on people sitting up here and I didn't consider that.
All good.
So my bad on that. All right, so from a protocol point of view, Mr. Kenny, correct me if I say anything that's incorrect or wrong, but typically what we do is it's in the applicant's hands now. If you'd like this to go to a vote, you would need 4 out of 7 members to vote in the affirmative to pass it. You could decide to pull the application and then represent a modified application without coming to a vote. Mr. Kenny, maybe you can straighten out, if we come to a vote and we turn it down, what are the requirements then when they come back compared to not going to a vote?
Well, so, Mr. Chairman, to your point, obviously, the applicant and architect have heard some of the questions and comments the board has, and you're certainly entitled to having a vote tonight.
I can save you some time if you want.
Sure.
So, I discussed with the client, they're in agreement with the board in that, the hot tub and the rooftop deck is a bit much, and is 100% willing to eliminate that from the request. There was a comment about widening the garage, although that is a good suggestion, it's right where the deck is. So I'm not sure there really is space to widen it, and the applicant would request that the deck stays because they're not gonna put the deck on.
Yeah, well, that's where modified design would come into play, right?
Correct.
If you were to come back with a modified proposal. I don't think, working off of these plans, that we could have a good view on what the alternate proposal might look like, just because it would be so radically different.
If the board wishes an updated plan, so because there's a bunch of moving parts here that you guys could then take a look at this with these modifications, we don't have a problem coming back.
So, Mr. Kenny, just again, just so I'm clear about it, if we went to a vote, and let's say, for the sake of argument, that it wasn't approved,
Denied.
how is it different than them choosing not to come back to a vote?
So what would happen is, if we voted tonight and it was denied, the theory of res judicata applies, which is Latin for already adjudicated. And what that means is, that same application could never come forward again by this applicant with regard to this property or any future applicant, unless it's substantially different, which is always a factual question.
So it sounds like they're gonna be
Yes.
substantially different regardless. So-
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a moot point, I would assume then, because
Correct, and
if the changes that they're looking at making, whether we
Agreed.
vote or not, they have already agreed that they'll come
Yes.
back with something substantial.
but I appreciate you pointing that out, because that's good, and again,
Well, it's good for the new board members
Absolutely.
to understand that too. Okay,
Absolutely.
great. So, what would you like to do, sir, or ma'am?
We would like to amend the plans.
Okay,
and come back.
great.
okay, and Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest, we're gonna give them a date certain, so they don't have to renotice again. However, just out of an abundance of caution, if you revise the plans, and if you need significantly different variances from what you already have said, call me, call April, you can get my number, and we'll call, because a notice might be required.
Okay.
But that would only be worst-case scenario. So we would give them a date until,
March 23rd.
is that, now, knowing that the plans have to be filed 10 days in advance, does that give you enough time?
I will be out of state.
Okay, so we can,
April 27th.
Okay.
and so we're going to adjourn this to April 27th, 2023 at 6 o'clock PM, at least at this point, without the need for any further public notice. So just for the record, do you you and your client consent to extend the time frame within which the board has
Mr.
to
Kenny,
act?
could you hold on just for a
Sure.
second? We've got some board members that might want to ask you or amongst ourselves some questions relative to whether or not we could decide on the changes now.
Well, if I may, so there's three ways you can handle it. Number one, you could say, you assume you're going to approve it with those conditions of approval. Or you say, there was a concern that, hey, should we see it before we approve it? And the other, and so that would be option number two, we were just going. And the third option would be, a little rare, but sometimes it's appropriate if you wanted to. If you had the applicants come back and make the plan revisions, and assuming the plan revisions addressed the things that you all raised tonight, you could direct me to have a resolution prepared so that when they come back, and if it gets approved, and if you're so inclined, we could adopt the resolution that night. So that would minimize.
Skip the 30-day wait.
Right.
So we'd be helping them in terms of speed of
Correct.
build, right. I'd like to poll the board members about whether or not they'd be comfortable approving something tonight based on the verbal conversation. So we got a no, we got a no.
We'd be calculating math and coverages.
We got a no. I'm a no. There's four right there. I see. All right. So I think we want to come back with a modified plan.
Got it.
The board, talk amongst themselves, and make a determination that we'd like to see. It's so radically different that I would personally would not be comfortable.
Right.
Because it wouldn't be clear to me what we would be approving. So.
And that's, once you say that respectfully, and I think it's a good point, I think that has to end that conversation.
Right. Okay, very good. Okay, so you're going to look at modifying the plan and then come back and resubmit it.
That's correct. We will modify everything. We will submit new documents to the township, and we will see you on the 27th.
I do believe, and again, Mr. Kenny straightened me out here, but I do believe this existing application continues.
Yes.
With these modifications versus if we turned it down.
Correct.
I think you gotta go back to the starting point and start
Oh, no,
over, right?
We're on the same page.
So that's the advantage
Yeah.
to not going to a vote and getting turned down tonight.
fully understand.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and just for the record, we're gonna do a motion to carry it until,
April 27th.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Great, thank you.
you know, why don't you give me a call tomorrow? You'll have my number, I don't have a card.
All right.
Okay.
The second application is for 208 15th Avenue. This, we carried this over from December.
Yes.
Excuse my pronunciation here, but Zainab Abdelkarova and Katraz Kazimov.
Perfect.
Pretty good,
And
right?
Mr. Chairman, we have a couple of procedural preliminary things. Do you mind if I bring everybody up to this?
We've got a request for bathroom break, so
Okay.
if we could just take 5 minutes.
Sure.
Please, 7:05, come back. Apologize, I didn't realize we were break so soon. Okay,
Okay.
so this is for 208-15.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, can I just do some preliminary procedural things for
Sure.
the record? All right, so good evening, and this is the continuation of a hearing which started on November 10th, 2022, correct, April? And so, Mr. Chairman, we've had some changes in life since then. So you recall, when we started, George McGill was representing the applicants, and Roberta Burse was representing the neighbors, the estate of Catellis, and Joseph Michelini was representing Constance and Bruce O'Leary. So now, George McGill is no longer representing the applicants, but rather, there's been a substitute of attorney, and Bill Shipers is representing the applicant. And Roberta Burse is still here tonight, and Joseph Michelini is still here. And then second change, we've had a change of, with the new year, there was a reorganization of the board, so we have a couple new board members. A couple of board members who are here tonight were not necessarily present for the November meeting. So we have, at a minimum, we have what I'm going to mark as B1. Did I take that from you, April? We have a certification from board member James Diorio that he listened to the recording or read the transcripts of the November 10th, 2022 meeting. And so we're going to mark that in as B1. And again, that's important, and thank you for doing it. It's not always the most fun thing, but it is important. And so just in terms of voting tonight, only those individuals who were present at the first meeting and tonight and/or listened to the tapes or reviewed the transcript are eligible to vote. So just for the record, April, how many eligible voters do we have tonight?
We have 7.
7, so that's good. Secondly, you'll recall at the end of the November 10th, 2022 meeting, it was getting sort of late, and we carried the application to December 15th. And a couple hours before that December 15th meeting, I think we realized, given the holiday schedule and COVID and other things, we realized we weren't going to have a quorum because, again, this was a use D variance application for the FAR. And so that meeting, on December 16th, we carried it, on December 15th, we carried it to January 26, 2023. And then that started an issue. So we're going to have here, what I'm going to mark as O Michelini 1 is a communication from Mr. Michelini, who's representing one of the objectors, to April. And it basically says, I'll just read it real quickly. As you know, I represent Mr. and Mrs. O'Leary, who are neighbors of the applicant that is represented by George McGill regarding 208 15th Avenue. As you know, the application was commenced on November 10, 2022, at which time the board heard extensive testimony from the applicant and their experts, both of whom were subject to lengthy cross-examination by me. Yesterday, December 15, 2022, the matter was to continue. At the 11th hour, just prior to 5 o'clock p.m., I was notified that the matter would not be heard due to the fact that Mr. McGill was having an adjourn. An adjournment request was made by Mr. McGill because the application needs 5 affirmative votes to obtain the floor area ratio variance, parentheses, special reasons variance, and only 5 members were intending to appear that would be eligible to vote. Although I was able to reach our planning expert who was traveling to Jersey City, I was unable to reach my client prior to their arrival in Belmar. They drove over an hour in the rain to attend the meeting. My clients did in fact attend the meeting, and it was announced by Mr. Kennedy that the adjournment request had been granted by the board. It is my understanding that the matter is now rescheduled for Thursday, January 26, 2023. He advised that I will be on a prepaid vacation in the Florida Keys with my wife, sister-in-law, brother-in-law from next date to from January 19th to January 28th. My client would like me to continue their representation at a subsequent hearing because I have significant familiarity with the matter, and further because matters that were brought up at the November 10th, 2022 hearing could also be raised at any subsequent meeting. Further, I have met with our expert and have prepared him for the testimony that was supposed to have been heard that night. As you may recall, the applicant's case was completed, and I was about to start direct examination of our professional planner, Samuel Bellamy, when the November 10th, 2022 meeting was adjourned. Given my significant involvement in the matter and the fact that the applicant was granted an adjournment at the 11th hour, and unfortunately, at great inconvenience to my client, he advised that I am requesting that the matter be adjourned from the January 26, 2023 hearing date due to my prepaid vacation, and that the matter be placed on the agenda for February of 2023 meeting. I've reached out to Mr. McGill to request his consent, but he advises that he cannot consent as his client is subject to any further delay in the matter. Please note, however, that the delay in the meeting of December 15, 2022 was solely occasioned by the applicant who could have proceeded and could have further requested that any vote be held until such time as other board members who participated previously at the November 10th meeting had an opportunity to review the transcripts of the proceedings last night. This did not occur, but certainly could have been done and would have been much less inconvenient for all parties involved. In any event, I respectfully request that this matter be carried to February so that my client is not disadvantaged as a result of my inability to participate in these hearings. So that we mark as O. Michelini 1, and just for the record, we're going to mark as B2 with my written communication in response. This is my letter as zoning board attorney to George McGill and Mr. Michelini, and I apologize, I did not send this to Roberta, so my apologies to you. It says, Dear Council, please be advised I'm writing to you on behalf of the Belmar Zoning Board of Adjustment. I'm sorry, this is dated December 27, 2022. In that regard, I would ask you please note the following. 1, the continued hearing scheduled for December 15, 2022 was carried because there was not 7 eligible members who were able to vote on the application. The quorum issue was not the fault of the applicants or the objector. The quorum issue was only discovered literally a few hours prior to the start of the December meeting. Board representatives attempted in good faith to reach out to the interested parties as quickly as possible to alert them of the situation. As you can imagine, health protocol, work commitments, family obligations, other reasons, and/or a combination of the same sometimes compromise the ability of the Land Use Board to have a full complement of members, particularly during the December holiday season. The subject application was carried until January 2023 without the need for any further public notice. I am in receipt of the December 16, 2022 communication from Mr. Michelini, in which he advises that while he was prepared to continue to conclude the case at the December meeting, because of prepaid vacation plans, he will be unable to attend the January 2023 meeting of the Belmar Zoning Board. As such, Mr. Michelini has requested that the matter be further carried and adjourned until the February 2023 meeting, when he will be back in the state of New Jersey. For a variety of reasons, Mr. Michelini understandably has reservations about attempting to secure another attorney to cover the January 23 meeting date, particularly in that the contested hearing has already commenced. Mr. McGill, as attorney for the applicant, understandably does not want to have any further delays on the application, particularly in light of the delays his clients have already endured. Clearly, there are a number of factual and legal issues at play, which include the following. We only have two more paragraphs. Professional courtesy to our fellow members of the bar, the statutory time frame within which an application is to be adjudicated at the risk of potential automatic approval, the public notice which has already been provided and/or which may need to be extended, the general nature of contested use/D variance, the potential for litigation associated with any ultimate decision the Land Use Board may issue, and the likely need to secure the applicant's consent to us to avoid any potential automatic approval. Obviously, all the above issues factor into the overall analysis of any further adjournment request. The objector's request for a further continuation remains outstanding. I would especially encourage both of you to attempt in good faith to mutually resolve the scheduling issues. The zoning board representatives will attempt in good faith to accommodate you both as much as reasonably possible. If the situation is not amicably resolved, the matter will need to be formally presented to the board for a determination, and such an action will likely involve arguments of counsel, written communications, a physical appearance, costs, legal fees, arguments, and a non-judicious use of scarce resources. In the spirit of the holiday season and in the spirit of professional cooperation, I would ask you both attempt to resolve the issue in a fair and efficient fashion. And for planning purposes, by copy of the letter, I would ask our friend, the board secretary, to advise you as to available future meeting dates should this issue factor into your analysis. So I'm glad to report that we marked that into the record. Cooler heads have prevailed. Everyone agreed, and we're here tonight. So I thank all council for that. So long introduction, but I want to put everything in the record because we've got a lot of attorneys in the room. A lot of attorneys always make me nervous. So what we're going to do, just before we begin, I'm going to swear in Ted. Ted Biondi, you are the zoning officer and construction official of the Borough of Belmar. Do you swear do you swear that the testimony information you're about to present, to the extent you present it, to be the truth, best of your knowledge, to help you God? Okay. And that having been said, we'll turn it over to the applicants and the attorneys, and I think that there was, Mr. Shackford told me that he was going to make a request, but ladies and gentlemen, because we have new board members, why don't you at least just all enter your appearances.
My name is Roberta Ann Burrows, URCC. I'm an attorney in Point Pleasant, and my client is the estates of Patelis.
Good evening again, to the old board members and new ones. Nice to see you. My name is Joseph Michelini. I'm from O'Malley, Sherman, and Michelini in Brick, New Jersey. I represent Constance and Bruce O'Leary, who are here and own a home just a few doors down to the west of the applicant's home.
Good evening, William J. Shackford, Chairman Shackford and Lonsky, Belmar, East Brunswick, on behalf of the applicants. My first appearance, I have, for the record, I have watched the video twice, about 3 hours and 18 minutes. Appreciate Mr. Diorio, did the same thing. Hope he has some pretzels like I did. Want to welcome the new board alternates. My name is William Shackford. Welcome, congratulations. I'm ready to go. It was nice meeting my colleagues, Mr. Michelini and I miraculously solved that issue within about
No problem.
3 minutes.
That's right.
And we're here. I understand he has his planner and his client. I do have an application, perhaps coming out of the cooler heads in time. Wine gets finer with age. So I suspect I'm going to argue later that so has this application. My motion is to reopen where it last ended. Mr. Kishuba, the planner, was crossed and finished by objector counsel. Mr. McGill rested. Then there was the discourse and the debate that brought us here this evening. During that time, during my involvement, my meeting the clients, conferences and discussions with Ms. Hearn and Mr. Kishuba, Ms. Hearn has as she often does, a recommendation for a potential amendment which minimizes to some degree the ask here. So I would respectfully request, Mr. Chairman, that the applicant be allowed to reopen direct, which was just closed when we ended. It's not like
I think
we went halfway through.
Given the shift of people involved in players, I think that would be helpful actually for the people that haven't sat through, and also just listening didn't give Mr. Diorio the opportunity to ask questions. So I think opening that I thought makes a little sense. But I do have one request. We have a third application tonight, the Mandia application, and I would like to try to see if you guys could budget your time such that we would leave at least an hour on our agenda, let's say from 9 to 10, to hear that application, because I know there's a lot of people in the audience, and I just don't want to take up the rest of the evening with this application and then not hear that one. So if you guys could focus on the reasons why, what the variances are, and the reasons why we should or should not approve this application, that would be helpful, because anything other than those things aren't really matters for us to be deliberating tonight.
I don't want to control my applicant's side of his case, but I don't see any reason. My reopen, I think, is 5 minutes.
Okay. I just would like to try to say, if we can't get done by 9, we might have to adjourn, so we fill out a Mandy application and heard tonight.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah, just briefly, I think I appreciate the effort to try to reduce the extent of the 6 or 7 variances and the floor area ratio variance, but any change in the plan should be reflected, because there's so many variances in this case. Any change in the plan should have been submitted to this board at least 10 days ahead of time, so that the public, we should have been notified, so that we know what we're talking about. Because I understand there's going to be a reduction in some portion of the building, which is going to change several of the variances. I think jurisdictionally, this board doesn't have the ability to even hear that, even though we welcome the opportunity to see a reduced plan. I don't think jurisdictionally the board has the right to hear any changes to the plan. And not only that, we had Mr. McGee.
I might object to that statement. I mean, we hear changes to the plan all the time. I understand this one might be a little more unique because of the volume, but you said we don't have the right. We do have the right. We do it all the time. But this one, I concur in that volume.
I think that it's appropriate when you have a change in the plan, especially in an application with so many asks, with so many variances, with so much contention, and so many neighbors out, that any change to the plan should have been on file at least 10 days ahead of time.
But that is not always the case, but I understand your point, and I think in this particular case, we can have that conversation if we wanted to defer on a formal vote this evening, pending submission of those modifications. But if the board concurs to do that, that means that we won't get to a vote tonight.
I understand that. The other thing I would say is, if the board proceeds over my objection, then I think Mr. Shipers agrees with this, that the testimony would be limited only to the changes and not going back over. I did not know that these people were going to come back and testify tonight. In all fairness, had I known that, I would have gone back over their testimony so that I could recross them, which took a very long time last time. I know it was probably too long for many board members, but I don't think it's fair to me to find out tonight when I come here that there's going to be new witnesses that
Well,
already
this is
testified.
interesting. So, are you suggesting that we shouldn't be having this meeting tonight then?
What I'm suggesting initially is that the board lacks the jurisdiction to hear any changes,
That's
even
false.
though we may welcome them.
Mr. Kennedy, could you intercede on that, please?
Yes.
Comment that the board lacks jurisdiction to consider changes.
Because of the lack of notice, that's all.
Could I,
In the hearings themselves, we negotiate changes all the time. So there's no lack of notice associated with that. Otherwise, we would never approve any application. We're always getting deferred.
I understand, but if Ms. Hearn is going to testify
I
about
just
a
be
revised
careful
plan.
about comments like that, because they're sweeping comments that are not applicable to this board's business, okay?
Well,
And I understand in this case the volume, all right, and I said it before, but you keep saying that we have to renotice when the applicants make changes, and we request and they grant changes, and then they get memorialized in this resolution all the time.
All right, I
So
understand.
please quit saying that.
Well, I understand your position. I was trying to answer your question. You asked me, are you saying that the board can't hear it tonight? So I reiterated my position. I was just responding to your
Are you asking this
question.
to be, either you ask for this to be adjourned because you don't feel that you're prepared for this meeting because you weren't given adequate notice of reopening, retestifying, you would have prepared differently. If you're saying you're requesting an adjournment, then request it. If you feel like you want to go forward, then we go forward, but you can't go forward and have this hanging there. So either request we adjourn because you're not ready, because of late breaking news that you just found out, and request an adjournment, do what you gotta do to get prepared, you put it back on the calendar, or you right now say, I'm ready to go forward. Those are two choices, there's not a third choice.
Yes, Steve. I am not ready to go forward. I prepared a closing based on the testimony, the direct, the plan, the D use variance,
Okay.
based on the application that was submitted.
I think it's very reasonable. We've had a lot of change of players, we've got a new attorney over here, we've got some new board members. I think it's very reasonable, if you really need more time to get ready to hear this case, then I think your obligation is, on behalf of your client,
I don't even
request
know,
it be adjourned to the next meeting, and then we'll move
we
on to
don't
the
even
third
know what the
application.
application is at this point.
So would you like to hear some of what's being requested and then adjourn?
I would
Is that what
like
you're suggesting?
to see the plans prior to the hearing, that's how I.
Okay, well then,
That's up to
well
you.
then, that hasn't happened.
He has a different plan.
There is.
Do you want to see the plans first and then come back, or?
I would only say, you know, if Mr. Shipers wants to go ahead, he said it's gonna be 5 minutes because he had told me before the meeting that it's gonna be limited only to the changes. And if that's what he does, and then we can come back and study the plan and finish up another time, that's fine, if he wants to put that 5 minutes of testimony on.
I'm fine with
You
that.
guys, I think, have to decide. Either you want it adjourned because you don't feel like you're ready, you don't have the information to represent your clients properly, or you're willing to listen to Mr. Shipers and let the case proceed. That's it.
May I have 5 minutes with my client?
Yes.
You're gonna turn on the mic.
So Mr. Shipers, she's got 2 minutes.
Mr. Ross?
Here.
Mr. Gregg?
Here.
Mr. Almeida?
Present.
Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Malanga?
Here.
Ms. Deep?
Here.
Mr. Diorio?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Newman?
So, Mr. Shipers, and we could put this up for a vote, but it seemed from the conversation during the break that board members had, we'd like to get a preview of the changes or what's being proposed in terms of variances.
Let me cut to the chase if I don't mind.
Sure.
I'll save you some time.
Sure.
We're all about substance over form. We want form correct, but we're all about substance. I'm involved in appeals every day. I'm going to limit every element of the appeal if we're successful. I've talked with my people. They adopt my suggestion. Ms. Hearn will make her minor amendments. We'll come back. She will then probably testify for 5 to 10 minutes, so they can plan with their experts. My engineer will testify for 5 or 10 minutes about how he changed the zone grid based upon the reduction, and we'll hopefully wrap this up. I request to come back, if possible, in March, and have any priority.
So you're opting not to have a high-level conversation about the proposed changes at this time and just allow them to see?
I know what the record's gonna read, I know
Okay.
what Freehold's gonna argue, and when I'm there with them,
Okay.
Freehold, I want to.
All right, so you're sort of concurring with the objection then in that they felt that they
I'm
didn't.
requesting that we come back
Okay.
with the change, without
Any
renotice.
objection to him
Of course not.
requesting comes back?
I don't want them being unprepared or
That's great.
And again, we
or
welcome the
surprised
And you
in any
concur.
way.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have one question. Are the plans available now, or will they be on file for us to review?
They're not available.
Okay, so we seem to have an uncomfortable agreement here, but both parties agree
It's very comfortable.
to adjourn.
So just one last question. When will the plans be available?
They'll be available at least 10 days before the hearing date.
A minimum, 10 days. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, can I just say one quick thing
Sure,
for the
yeah.
record, just because
Of course.
a couple of
Oh,
legal
wait,
things.
we have to ask for something too.
Well, the chairman had asked you to just weigh in when this discussion was going on before, and I didn't hear from you, so I
Yes.
just would like.
No, it's a fair question, and my answer may differ with some of my colleagues, but I think the question is, hey, are we allowed to entertain changes along the way? And the answer is, of course we are, and of course we do, and of course we can. And the other answer is, it depends. It's a matter of the nature and the degree of the change. I don't know what the changes are here, so I can't say
It's
good,
a moot
bad,
point now
or
because
Absolutely.
it looks like we're
But
adjourned.
just for the record, things that we usually would look at are, is the change going to make it a more intense application? Are you going to increase the nature or extent of the number of variances?
The answer to those questions is no.
Or are you decreasing and making it more conforming? And Mr. Chairman, to quote my good friend, Chairman Fitzgerald, at the last hearing that we had just 30 minutes ago.
Quote-worthy statement?
You did, you had many, and one of them was, should we vote on this tonight? And you said, this is radically different, what we're talking about now, and I want to see it. And that was a perfect answer. And of course, if there's something radically different, you cannot vote on it. And people are entitled to notice. So anyway, it all depends on what the nature of the changes are, and that's what we're going to hear. But the point is moved now. So April, what's the date that we're going to carry?
March 23rd.
Okay, March 23rd. March 23rd.
Any prepaid vacations on March 23rd?
I wish there were.
So we're going to carry that to March 23rd, 2023, without the need for any further public notice. So we're going to carry that, and again, March 23rd, 2023, at 6:00 p.m., without the need for any further public notice. And Mr. Shipers, for the record, do you, on behalf of your client, consent to extend the time frame within which the board has to act?
Yes.
Okay, so I know there's two attorneys in the room tonight, but for other members of the public who are here, if you're interested on this particular application, you're not going to get another notice. This is your notice, so please come back. And I thank Mr. Shipers for eliminating the issue. I thank the other counsel for coming, and we'll see you. I guess we have a motion to carry this to March 23rd.
I'll make that motion to carry this to the 23rd of March.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you all for reading. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mary. Nice to meet you. Take a shower.
That was 208.
Yes, so
This
now
one
it's
is-
March.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Sure.
You can do attendance, right, April? I don't think you ever wrote, right? Okay, so we're ready to hear the application for 1708 B Street.
I think the attorney stepped out.
Oh, he did? Okay, Mr. Kennedy, my memory sometimes serves me well, and this time it is, and I just want to make sure that we could bring this up when the attorney comes
Yes.
back in. But I do recall an issue with this application for notification purposes in that across the street is considered Lake Como from this home. So if this
visit, I don't know if no notification is necessary for them for the return visit now, or notification was required again, but if so, the zones span into Lake Como, and we will have that exact issue. So we might as well just get that out of the way to begin with. The house across the street is considered Lake Como. We have a problem with the defect is the notification, the original meeting.
And I gave the certification.
Okay. So, a couple of things. Oh, okay. April says that they did notice Lake Como.
Into the Lake Como residence.
Great.
Okay, excellent.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of preliminary, procedural things that we need to address. Is there anyone here who had any questions or comments regarding the sufficiency of the notice? And I know a gentleman just had come up to me and asked a question. So if someone had a question about notice?
I talked.
Just come up to the mic and just state your name, please.
John Murray, 21418. I talked to the owner of 1704 B Street, and he said he did not receive any sort of mailing about this. There are new owners to that property, so.
Okay, and what's the, who did you speak?
Bob Geist, Geist.
Okay.
And Bob's not here tonight,
No.
so we kind of have an issue
Yes.
with that.
He said, yeah.
Your pointing this out, but Bob really should.
He doesn't live in the area. I saw him over the weekend.
Okay, and April's gonna go get the list. Thank you. Is there anyone else here who had any questions or comments regarding the sufficiency of the notice? Okay, and, Mr. Chairman, April just went to grab, one thing. And why don't we, just come back to that for a moment, and let's mark into the record, what we as a board have before us. A1 is the development application package dated September 22nd, 2022. A2 is the minor land use zoning permit, and that is dated August 31st, 2022 / September 14th, 2022. And A3 is the Borough of Belmar minor land use application denial letter dated September 14th, 2022. A4 is a plot plan prepared by the Cannon Group, and it's dated August 15th, 2022, last revised September 19th, 2022. So that was A4. A5 is a topographic survey prepared by the Cannon Group, dated August 15th, 2022. A6 is a plan of topography prepared by Lieber Land Group, and that is dated June 27th, 2019. And A7 is a series, or it's two photographs. We're going to mark it A7A and A7B, and we'll have those photographs identified momentarily. And last but not least is A8. A8 is floor plans and elevations prepared by XL Homes, and it's consisting of 3 sheets, and it's dated June 21st, 2022. And then, because we're still waiting for April, for the third and final time tonight, we'll swear in Ted Bianchi. Ted, you are the zoning officer and the construction official of the Borough of Belmar. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth, the best of your knowledge to help you God? I do. Okay? And, Mr. Chairman, we need one more second.
Sure.
Okay, so the list that we have is, has the prior owner listed. So, Mr. Middleton, you're comfortable with proceeding?
When is the list date?
October 14th, or October 4th, 2022.
Yes.
Okay. And actually, and just for the record, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
John Murray.
John Murray. You, just for the record, you were able to at least tell your neighbor that the hearing was tonight?
Yes.
Okay, good, well, appreciate that. So, Mr. Chairman, under the circumstances, I'm okay with proceeding if the board's okay with this.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that having been said, and Mr. Murray, thank you for bringing that to our attention. So against that backdrop, we can turn the meeting over to Mr. Middleton on behalf of the applicant.
Yeah, good evening, members of the board. Timothy B. Middleton on behalf of the applicant, Louis Media. We're here tonight requesting permission to build a approximately 900 square foot ranch on the property. By way of history, Mr. Mania bought the property in 2018. At the time he bought the property, there were two homes on the site. One in the back, one in the front. In 2019, approximately April, the front house was destroyed by fire. We're currently requesting approval to essentially replace that front house with the ranch. I should note that your ordinance section 40-7.3, I'll read from it, does permit the reconstruction of a non-conforming home due to fire, provided that the reconstruction be limited to the extent of the previous non-conformity. In this case, the proposed house is slightly larger than the house that was destroyed by fire, slightly longer. And there were a few jogs in that old house that we're trying to square off. Other than that, it's essentially the same house, other than it's probably not as high. The ranch, I believe the old house was a silver cape. With that being said, I have Mr. Mandy here to my right. Mr. Kashuba will provide planning and engineering testimony. Mr. Alvarez is also here, he's the builder.
And Mr. Chairman, one other real quick note to your earlier point tonight in a different application. You had asked about res judicata. And Tim, just for the record, this applicant was the subject of a prior application. I do not believe you were the attorney of record. But I believe that prior application was ultimately dismissed without prejudice?
Correct.
Okay, in April, that's correct?
Correct.
So, Mr. Chairman, let's just say, and I don't know that it is, it's the same exact application that was brought previously, that res judicata that I talked about earlier does not apply if the initial application was not substantively ruled upon. So the fact that it was withdrawn and dismissed without prejudice means it doesn't apply.
Right.
So that's why we don't have.
It's like a brand new application.
Absolutely.
Well, in law school, they say you get one bite at the apple.
Right.
And here, my client never bit the apple.
Okay.
And so because of that, it's okay that you all were not here when the last application was heard, or some of you were on vacation or sick that night because it didn't happen for the purpose of this. All right, thank you.
With the permission of the chairman, I'd like to call Mr. Manning.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, if you could just state your name and address, please.
Sure. Louis Mandia, 1708 B Street.
All right, good evening and welcome to the Belmar zoning board. Do you swear, if you could just raise your right hand, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Manning, just identify yourself for the board and tell the board how you're related to the application.
Sure. Louis Mandia, I'm the property owner of 1708 B Street, Belmar, New Jersey. Purchased my property roughly in 2018.
I think the exact date, I checked it out, was March 24th, 2018.
Yep.
And at the time you bought the property, as I understand it, it was what I'm going to call a front house and a back house.
Right.
And about a year after you bought the property, unfortunately, there was a fire in the front house, correct?
Correct.
As a result
You're currently here before the board to obtain approval to build a 900 square foot plus or minus ranch.
Correct.
The house that was destroyed by fire, as I understand it, based upon the photographs I saw, was sort of a Cape Cod. Maybe slightly larger in terms of the height.
Correct.
Tall. As I further understand it, you're going to own or occupy the front house.
Correct.
The plan that was submitted, and you're working with Mr. Albertus, correct?
Yep.
He's sitting behind me. He has looks like a bluish black shirt on, correct? And the plan that he submitted, the handsome guy behind me, right? The plan he submitted is shown on the board is what you're proposing.
That's correct.
How many bedrooms are you proposing?
3 bedrooms,
And how many bathrooms?
1 bathroom.
Okay. Kitchen, living room,
Yep.
and it's a ranch on a second, without a second floor.
Without a second.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay, great. Any other presentation?
Yes, I have, Mr. Kashuba.
Do we want to go around for board questions or wait until they're done presenting? Wait. Okay, great. Yeah, please proceed.
All right, Mr. Kosiuba, if you could just state your name, please, and business address.
Joseph Kashuba, Kociuba, KBA Engineering Services, Manasquan, New Jersey.
All right, good evening and welcome. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
I do.
And just for the record, you're testifying tonight in your capacity as?
Both a licensed engineer, licensed planner.
Thank you.
Mr. Kashuba, you're familiar with the subject property, correct?
I am. Should we check my credentials are accepted?
Yes, we
Yes.
are trying, especially for people we see do many times before we accept your credentials.
Thank you very much. Just making sure the record's clear. Sorry.
I shouldn't make that assumption. But- So you're familiar with the property, correct?
I am, yes.
You're familiar with the application?
Yes.
And you've had discussions with Mr. Manning, correct?
Yes.
And you've had various discussions with Mr. Albertus, correct?
Correct.
Could you briefly describe the property as it sits today?
Certainly. So what I'll hand out are a few exhibits for the board. We have 3 11 by 17 exhibits.
All right, so hold on, we're up to A9, and what is A9?
So A9, and I have them mounted on a board as well. A9 is a aerial exhibit of the property,
Is there a date on that?
undated.
Okay.
Just for foundation purposes, Joe, when was the aerial taken approximately?
I believe the aerial was taken approximately 2020.
And is it a Google?
And it was taken from Google, that's
Right,
correct.
so it's a Google Earth.
The Google Earth data.
And there's a red dot on the aerial, which I'm assuming depicts the subject property.
Yes, so the aerial depicts the subject property.
And there's a back house, correct?
Correct, so I'll put up on the board the same aerial that was, that's in that packet. Bottom left on the board is the aerial that was submitted. What are we marking that as?
That's A9, the aerial.
A9 is aerial.
In addition to the aerial, which is right by my office, undated, properties in the center with the red mark and highlighted in yellow. The second exhibit submitted is a tax map of the property with the property shaded in green.
And I'm sorry, Joe, is A9, is this aerial, is that board gonna be A10?
These are what were handed out, so I'm going to mark them individually.
Okay, I mean, and what was the,
So A10 is a copy of the tax map blown up with the property highlight.
thank you.
And then A11 is a copy, a cut of the plot plan that was previously submitted, colored and identifying the front porch. We'll call that A11.
And was that given out or that was submitted?
That was also handed out.
Okay, just when
So
you get a
these-
chance, throw one down to me so we can.
It was in the stack of,
Oh, okay, oh, got it.
tried to collate it to
Got
move
it.
things along and then almost spilled them all over everybody. Sorry.
Got it.
So turning into A9 then, as I look at the aerial, it shows the back house as I referred to, correct?
Correct,
And
correct.
it shows the front of the property is bare.
Currently vacant, correct.
Okay. And That's sort of unusual in this neighborhood.
It is. After the fire, that front home was demolished, that is shown on the aerial. You can see the surrounding property all in the R40 zone. The property immediately to the east, and you identify that on A10 as well, is kind of an L-shaped property which wraps around the property in question, and behind it, there's 3 homes on that lot 7. Lot 9, which is the lot immediately to the south, has 2 dwellings on it. Lot 6, 2 properties to the north, has 2 dwellings on it. All of the properties in this block, that front on B Street, are all multiple unit properties. They're all similar in size too. This is a 33-foot wide lot, 100 feet deep, 3,300 square foot zone. As identified, was subjected to the fire. That front home, the previously existing home, was 3 bedrooms. The applications for a new 1-story, 3-bedroom home. So we're trying to match what was there previously. The rear home does currently exist, that was maintained, a 2-bedroom home that is going to stay. Mr. Middleton did speak about the ordinance, specifically that a non-conforming use or structure that has been destroyed by fire may be restored. So in this particular case, what that means is we're asking for the opportunity to build the second home. We're asking for the opportunity to massage that second home in a more appropriate manner, and that'll be the crux of my testimony, is that what we're proposing is better planning than simply replacing the exact footprint of what was there before. So I'll refer to A11, the plot plan, the colored plot plan for most of my testimony. So what we're proposing in that front home is a new 1-story dwelling. The front yard setback will match exactly what was previously existing at 11.7 feet. The board is well aware, the Belmar ordinance porch is forward of that, and we're permitted to be 8 feet forward of the allowed setback. The allowed setback is the average of the 2 neighbors. So although the plot plan does identify a variance for front yard setback, after further research, I don't believe a variance is necessary. The 2 homes,
variance is not necessary?
the front yard setback.
Thank you.
The 2 homes on each side are at setbacks of 9.4 feet and 11.8 feet to the home, not to the porch, which is an average of 10.6. So by ordinance, you can place the home at 10.6 feet and have an 8-foot porch forward of that. We're proposing 11.7 feet, so 1 foot further back, and a 6-foot porch. So in my opinion, and I'll certainly ask Ted if he has any question or concern with that, but in my opinion, that front yard setback variance actually isn't required. We're in the appropriate location based upon the orders. We're proposing to maintain the gravel driveway down the south side of the property, which provides parking for 4 vehicles. That was the previous location. The change in the location of the home compared to the original home, the side yard setback on the north side was 2.8 feet. The proposed is 3 feet. The impact there, although minimal, has a substantial impact when you're talking fire code. So a home at a 2.8-foot setback is not permitted to have any windows on that side of the home. The previous home did. It was built before the current fire code, but 3 feet is what's required in order to have openings pursuant to the building and fire
So
code.
that marginal difference then is significant from a fire code point of view.
Correct, correct. And it's going to be new construction under the current code, so it'll be fully compliant with the fire code, having a fire rating on that side, both the walls, eaves, and roof, all within the 5-foot setback. So that'll all be now compliant with the fire code. Very important generally, obviously, this proven on this property, certainly a benefit.
You're allowed 25% openings on a 3-foot.
Correct. I thought it was 15. I'll take your answer. 25%. Ted knows better than I on building code. We do need relief to maintain the gravel driveway at 0 feet. That's what it always existed. That southerly setback previously was 9.5 feet. It's now 9 feet. So there's a slight increase in the width of the home, about 3 inches, 3.5, I think. And that's to provide a full 21-foot wide. And in modular construction, it's very difficult to get those fractional inches. So not a substantial change, probably not even perceptible to the neighborhood, but it will be about 3 inches wider than the pre-existing home. We'll have a 9-foot setback on the southerly side, a 3-foot setback on the northerly side. So The northerly side requires a variance for that setback, but it is improving. It was at 2.8, moving to 3. The rear yard setback remains, which is the setback to the garage, to the rear structure at 4.5 feet. That's not changing. Nothing in the rear setback is changing as a result of the application. Those are all pre-existing nonconformities. I've reviewed the historic aerials of this area. These homes date back to sometime between the 20s and 30s on the map, and certainly were there in 1953 prior to any zoning ordinance. So they do predate all those. And again, we're not changing anything with regard to the back home, other than we're reducing a little bit of the concrete pad in the back of the property, little patio back there that we'll be reducing in size. So the variance is being requested. We've noticed for, I believe, the D variance associated with the fact that we have two homes here. In my opinion, this is not a new D1 use variance. Again, your ordinance permits the home to be reconstructed in its previously existing location. So the board should look at this as more what we call a D2 variance, an expansion. Basically, what we're saying is we're allowed to build the home back in its original footprint. We're looking to change that. So reviewing that expansion, what the impacts are to the neighborhood as a result of that expansion. Now, when we say expansion, obviously there's always a concern that we're going over and above what previously existed and might impact the neighbors substantially. One example, moving it to a 3-foot setback versus 2.8, it's getting better, but it's still by definition an expansion. The house does get slightly longer. It's about 4 feet longer than it previously existed. But in the previous iteration, as shown on the original survey, this was already marked into as one of the exhibits. Previously, there was a deck that actually connected the front porch of the back house to the back of the front house. So there was no green space, there was no separation. It was structured straight through from the front house all the way back to the rear of the property. That deck was eliminated in the fire. We're not proposing to replace that. So although the home does get slightly deeper, we're going to have a proper separation between the two homes that never existed. The rear yard setback is staying at 4.5 feet, where 25 feet is required. The shed in the rear, there's a small shed attached to the rear home, that stays as well. That's at 0.7 feet, where 3 feet is required. Again, we're not touching any of that as a result of the application. The allowable building coverage is 30%. The previous building coverage is 48.36, and the proposed is 52.79. That slight increase is the home itself is getting about 160 square feet larger. Where that happens, and I'll refer to the colored plot plan and the home, and actually I'm going to flip the original survey. One survey has a street on the bottom, one survey has a street on the top. You can see this kind of cutout that previously existed in the home. It was probably, you know, I imagine probably some additions or something, but the original footprint was kind of odd in the back of the property, which makes redeveloping it with a, you know, an appropriate layout for a 3-bedroom home, a modest 3-bedroom home, very difficult to try and match that footprint exactly. So we are looking to square that off and extend it slightly. What I'll do is I'll bring up the architectural plans that were prepared by the modular company, just show the board, and they should be part of your package as well. The floor plan. This is by no means a mansion. You know, we have 3 bedrooms, front porch, entry on the right side of the front porch, into a modest living room, walk through into a kitchen, and a small family room in that area where those notches previously existed. 3 bedrooms down the left side with 1 small bath in between those. This layout is generally the same as what previously existed. This last bedroom got slightly longer. And again, we're squaring the building off in this area to create a family dining room area. Again, the expansion is only about 170 square feet. The porch, however, is actually getting smaller. The previous porch was deeper than what we're proposing. We're proposing a 6-foot porch. So the porch reduces by about 28 square feet.
Just to ensure the property owner, I believe, has indicated to both you and I, Mr. Lewis, that he's going to owner occupy the home, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And he would deed restrict it for being owner occupied.
Correct.
As a non-rental.
That's my understanding what the applicant would stipulate.
I'm sorry, say that again, I missed that.
The owner applicant has indicated to Mr. Kashuba and I, Mr. Alvarez, that he'll be owner occupied. And he's even willing to go forward and deed restrict the property to only be owner occupied and not to be a rental.
Justify that?
The impervious coverage proposed, pre-existing was 87%, we're reducing that to about 83%. Again, moving in the right direction, but still requires request for relief. The allowable is 55%. And the building increases here, as I've indicated, are necessary simply to square off and make it a usable family room at the back corner. Has the same number of bedrooms, same number of bathrooms, certainly not an elaborate size. The first bedroom is about 8'5" by 9'8". The second bedroom, 9'8" by 7'3". The third bedroom, 9'9" by 9'8". Not substantial sizes. Just trying to replace what was there, but allow for contemporary living. We've stipulated that it will be owner occupied. The benefit there is pride of ownership, obviously, and trying to provide a home that can allow for year-round living. So in my opinion, the proposed expansions here do not have any substantial impact upon the neighborhood. Regarding any reduction in air, light, and open space, I'll refer to sheet 2 of the elevations, and identify that the proposed dome, as Mr. Middleton proffered at the beginning of the application, and this, we're actually looking at the rear, has an A-frame roof, pretty typical A-frame roof for the proposed dwelling. The porch will have a small roof over the front of it. We'll go back to A1 to show the front of the home. The existing home is a cape with the roof line in the opposite direction, and kind of presents more like a 1.5 story. It had a side window. That was taller and had a lot more impact and view from the street. So from an air, light, and open space consideration, I think this actually has less impact to air, light, and open space than the previous home that existed did. In addition, we're pushing that setback slightly, but we're pushing it away from the closest neighbor on the north side, 2.8 feet to 3 feet. We're keeping it 1 story, substantially conforming with the height requirement, and providing 2 parking stalls per unit. The increase in building coverage here is not visible from the street. Again, it's just getting a little bit longer and squaring off. It will not have an impact to any streetscape or views from the street. And in the rear of the property, again, where it's being squared off is an area that's not really impacting any of the neighbors. Referring back to A9, the aerial, you can see that the 2 driveways for the 2 properties abut each other in that area. So there's more space over there, so that small expansion in that corner will have less impact compared to if we were expanding on the 3-foot side. So I think all of it is appropriate. I don't believe there's any detriment. I don't believe it will substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan or zoning ordinance. Quite to the contrary, your ordinance allows for this reconstruction. We're simply trying to put it in a little bit better place and allow for a little bit nicer home.
I got one question. I have a survey here from Canyon.
Yes.
It has a lot coverage of 77.48%.
I recalculated those.
Also the driveway, how did you calculate the driveway? It's a stone driveway.
It's a stone driveway, correct. So I did not count that as part of building coverage, but I did include it in my impervious coverage.
Did you count the whole 648?
I had it at actually, the proposed is 720, the previous existing was 648. We're making it a little longer to make sure we keep it.
Okay, there's an exception in the ordinance now where they allow 50% for gravel driveways.
You're correct, and I forgot about that.
That gets you 60 off. So it helps you out a little bit.
It does, it brings that down. Our position is we're reducing it. The driveway gets slightly larger, but that big concrete patio on the back is coming out.
So that would reduce.
Could I ask, as we go through questions, that you just do a recalculation, so we, for the record, we could put the correct percentage then, if the existing didn't take that 50% credit into effect, we'd like to make sure that the numbers are correct.
Absolutely. Before we finalize, I'll do the numbers.
That'd be great. Sharpen the pencil. Okay, is that it for the presentation?
That's it for the
Yes.
presentation. Let's, have any questions?
Board questions, starting with Mr. Ross.
Yeah, just the AC condensers, I missed where they're at, I don't see them on the plan.
They are there, they're kind of small and hidden. The existing AC condenser is right next to the shed and the back protrusion on the back home. That stays exactly what it was. And the front one, we're placing essentially in the same location, location next to that rear stoop.
All right, that was the only
And again, small one story, only needs one condenser.
Right, that's the only question. Thanks.
Mr. Rick.
Nothing's being done to the back house at all. That's staying the same.
Except I think you said that the concrete pad is being removed?
Correct, the only change to the back, we're removing some of that patio.
And this new house is approximately 3 inches wider and 4 feet longer, and that's what we're talking about?
Correct, it's a 0.3 feet wider.
4 inches.
Which is, yeah,
That's all I
and
have.
about 4 feet long.
Just for my confirmation, the previous front house was 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom,
Yes, the applicant's here to confirm that as well.
and that was owner occupied during the fire, or was that
No.
rented?
It was rented.
Rear house, heat, no heat,
Heat.
has heat. Certificate of occupancy is
Yes.
issued for both during rentals. Would you consider making some improvements to the rear dwelling? And I don't mean significant, but I certainly noticed that the front porch is deteriorating. Also, couldn't help but notice that you have utility lines that run power to your rear house, and then also to a house that's behind you. Right, so I would give consideration potentially taking those utilities and put them on the ground. Is there separate water and sewer for these houses?
Yes, that's correct.
For both? So you have separate sewer and a separate water?
Correct.
Parking, just so I'm clear, Ted, only 4 spots are required for this?
Pardon?
3 spots or?
3 spots, 4 bedrooms, 3 spots. 3 bedrooms, 2 spots.
But now, does it change if it's 2 structures?
That's my question.
Well, each structure,
So yeah, the rear home is 2 bedrooms, so it requires 1.8, I think is the number.
yeah,
And the front home is 3 bedrooms, requires 2.
Alright, so 4. Alright. And I guess the swing, it's, no further questions.
My questions have been asked. Thank you.
Ms. Deeds.
No questions.
No questions. And just curious, what's happening with the basement or below the first floor?
Doing a basement?
Crawl space?
It probably would be dependent upon the water table. Joe, maybe you can, we
Any
talked
idea
about
the
that.
height of the basement?
So I have not done a soil boring on the property yet. I think we'd probably plan for a prototypical 8-foot basement, but we need to do some testing first to verify.
Okay, anything going in the basement also?
Storage and mechanical.
Is this considered flood zone property?
No.
No, it is not. Okay.
And I can indicate, I do know a number of the homes on B Street that do have these.
Okay, and then what about the attic? What's happening above the first floor ceiling?
I think it's a standard attic. It's not very high. It's only a 712 pitch. Certainly can't stand up fully under there, other than maybe right under the center.
So you have like drop-down stairs, like storage up there or something like that?
Yeah, there's a pull-down stair called
Okay.
for and built bedroom 2.
Okay, great. And then to reflect Mr. Almeida's comment, it'd be very helpful if there was some commitment to improvement on the rear house only because of the state of disrepair that it's been in. And then to the degree that, again, not at any cost, but getting the utilities underground would also be a huge improvement to the neighborhood. So all that would go towards additional positive criteria that would only help us approve the variances. Not to say we wouldn't without those things, but I think, we try to, for the purpose of the neighborhood, try to get some aesthetic improvement when and if that's feasible. I think you would want that.
Mr. Manny, just spoke to us, we want to address
Okay.
these issues with the board.
Absolutely in favor of doing that, right? It took a number of years, as you guys know, but I'm finally, hopefully able, upon your approval, to actually be financially stable to rebuild that, right? So now, I'm not just looking to put a house there, that new construction, I want to also enhance the exterior of the back house, so it doesn't stick out.
I promise you, you will never regret putting them underground if you have the opportunity to do it.
Those wires, the electric wires, which I know are a known issue, I believe that the property next door, I think it's 1704, or 1704, 1706, that on L-shaped lot, and that was just recently sold, I believe, like maybe 4 to 6 months ago, so I'm still waiting to find out the person who's going to own it and reside there, because we need to get that.
Okay. And I don't live too far away, but I don't know if your street this applies to, but many streets down at that end of town have notches in the curb that indicate where you connect your sump pump underground to. So if you're going to put a basement, if you have the ability to connect your sump below ground to stop water from draining in the gutter and on the street to the storm drain, those sump pump lines really stop that water from turning into ice and puddling like you see in other spots of town. So we would want, if you have an underground connection, using it would be a condition, would be like a condition of the application that we'd like to see you do.
Absolutely.
And the same thing goes with the underground. We don't mandate it, we recommend it if it's feasible, and with good faith, you make an effort to do it.
I think it makes sense.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chairman, just say it again, if you have an underground connection.
If the area of town has the facility to do an underground sump pump connection for the storm drain, the applicant should utilize that, and not drain into the curb or the gutter.
Got it.
That's number one. And then number two, the good faith effort
Got it.
relative to REing the utilities.
Particularly now, there's a testimony that he needs to work with the neighbor on that too,
I
because.
don't know. Is that a requirement? I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Your neighbor would have to go along with you to do that?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you.
In my experience, yes, because it's a service to a neighboring property, they would have to agree to move in.
That's having to go through your property? Yeah, that makes it harder.
So we'll represent.
Yeah, all right, well, just, like you said,
Yeah.
we don't typically, make that,
And he's willing
unless
to-
there's some issue, we don't make that a requirement of the application, we just encourage you to do it. Okay. Oh, yeah, here we go, thank you, Mike.
I'm good.
Same, good.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so we're going to open it up to members of the public. If anyone's here to speak about this application, now would be the time.
All right, just your name and address again?
John Murray, 214 18th Avenue.
All right, good evening. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you're providing, will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Several years ago, Mr. Mandia came before this board with a proposal to build a house on this property in which he planned to raise his family. At the same time, this property was also listed on Zillow and advertised as Build Your Forever House, build a house and rent out the back house to offset expenses, or build a house and rent out both as an investment property. During the discussion on his original plan, the back house came up. Mr. Mandia stated that he needed the back house for when family and friends came to visit. The board discussed making the back house a non-rental unit, in which Mr. Mandia objected, stating that he would lose money at the time of resale if he couldn't advertise the property with the ability to rent the back house. Before the board could rule on his proposal, Mr. Mandia lost his signal for Zoom, and the board postponed their discussion until the next meeting. A week or two later, Mr. Mandia withdrew his proposal. This brings us to Mr. Mandia's present proposal. It appears that Mr. Mandan has chosen plan 2 or 3. I just heard that he said that he would not rent out the front house. But I guess my question is that in forever, if he sells the property, would the buyer be able to rent out the front house and the
No.
back house?
If you're questioning the board,
Yes.
I could maybe try to address it, and Mr. Kenny, just coincidentally, it's part of the debate with the email that got sent earlier
Yes.
today relative to, does the board, do zoning boards have the right to insist on deed restrictions, or even if they're volunteer, are they enforceable? So it's a dubious legal question right now, and I think Mr. Kenny's gonna walk away with a homework assignment relative to any application where the deed restriction subject comes up, because it may be unconstitutional to put those requirements on a piece of property, and it may not be enforceable. So appreciate the effort. I just don't know whether or not there's legal standing for a zoning board to do that, even though I know in the past we've had a couple applications where we've done that. It might not hold up. Mr. Middleton, you have a comment?
I believe you can. There's certain restrictions you cannot do. For example, you can't put a restriction on a property that is, this happened in Point Pleasant with the Felice automobile shop, that when he sold the shop, the variance would terminate. And the court in that case said clearly not. The variances or restrictions run with the land.
That's true.
And in our case, the restriction would run with the land. It would be enforceable upon Mr. Mandia or anybody who bought from him. And the only way that restriction could be excised is if somebody came before the board in the future and was able to convince the board. It's a very difficult
Well,
standard.
Mr. Middleton, what you say is accurate relative to variances we grant. They travel with the land and transcend future ownership. But when it comes to deed restrictions, it's a separate matter. It's a separate matter that is still under debate, and that's going to be Mr. Kenny's homework assignment relative to, before we approve this resolution. If this gets approved, before the resolution gets approved, we're going to need definitive legal guidance on that matter, because, again, I know in the past we've insisted on some deed restrictions, and it's possible that we're incorrect in doing that. Maybe illegal, maybe unconstitutional for you, for us. We may not have the authority to insist on deed restrictions as a zoning board, and also the town may find it unenforceable. That's what's pending, and that we have an appeal going on relative to that very point on prior application. So maybe if they rule and the judge says it's okay, then we'll have precedent that we can go with. So, okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Murray. Yeah.
Was the previous home that burned down, was that a rental also?
Yes. Front and back were
Front and
rentals.
back, yeah, we're both rentals.
But it is a positive criteria if the applicant is agreeing that it will be owner occupied compared to the previous use. That's a positive criteria change.
As long as it's continuous, to the next owner.
True.
It's my understanding that Mr. Mandia also owns the 2 houses next to this, the 2 rentals next to this. Is that true?
No,
Is no one in your family or anyone?
that may be correct, but I personally do not.
Okay. So the 2 houses next to the ones that he's proposing are somehow related to the whole thing. Those are 2 rental properties. Next door, where they just, where I spoke to the gentleman in 1704, they have 3 rental properties there that they're renovating. Connected to the backyards is a house. It's a 2-story rental. Several years ago, it was considered the animal house of Belmar. Basically, in that 20, 30 yards, we could have potentially 7 or 8 rental properties. This is a concern to me. question about the quality of life of the people in our neighborhood. Now, the house that he's proposing is listed as a 3-bedroom. I look at it as possible 4-bedroom, as a rental property. Now, he says he's not going to rent, and obviously if he's going to be living there, he's not. I look down the road, and I see this as a 4-room rental, a 4-house rental. The back room, take the table out, you put it in the front, and you throw mattresses on the floor. We're talking about potentially 16 people renting that house, if you figure 4 in each bedroom, not counting boyfriends, girlfriends, half shares, quarter shares.
Mr. Murray, I just, if I could, just for a moment though, when a house gets destroyed by fire, there's an ordinance in town that allows that house to be rebuilt, right? So it's a moot point that a house is going to be rebuilt. So really what this comes down to is the level of expansion over what was there significant enough to create a problem for the area. But in terms of the right to rebuild that house, they have the right. Obviously, they don't necessarily have the right to build a 4,000 square foot house on a 30 by 100 foot lot, but you know, it's a moot point in terms of they have the right to rebuild this house.
Yeah, and believe me, I'm in favor of putting something there.
Right.
But, you know, I know the town has a master plan in regards to land use. And I don't understand setbacks, this, that, variances. But, you know, listening to it, it's like they're trying to stuff 5 pounds of dirt in a 1 pound bag. I would love for the house to be in exactly how it was, but with the elimination of the back house as a rental. And I think that...
I think legally, even with the back house being there, they're allowed to rebuild this front house and maintain that back house. So it's beyond our ability to even consider turning it down based on, you know, we're only going to allow rebuild of the front house if the back house is eliminated. We don't have the jurisdiction to do that.
Then why the last time that he presented the house?
Because it was excessive. First of all, that's a different application, and we started with that. I don't want to harken back to it.
Okay.
But if you recall, I do, the house that was being built was gigantic. This is not.
Yeah, 2.5.
This is extremely smaller, so, and within reason and very close to what existed previously. So anyway, I don't mean to cut you off, but
no.
Please finish. I'm just trying to keep you on track in terms of it's a moot point. They're going to be allowed to rebuild the front house.
Yeah, and as I said, I'm in favor of building the house. My concern is the back house as well. If there's something that can be done to eliminate that.
I think you're going to have to deal with code enforcement when there's violations and work with the town. If that rental becomes a problem property, I think you're going to have to come to the council meetings, you're going to have to speak to the police department. You know, like any other back rental that we might have in town, it's a problem. That's how you're going to have to deal with it. Hopefully that won't be the case. I mean, especially if the front is owner occupied, you tend to self-right because it's not absentee landlord.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Kevin, if the applicant is saying, offering the deed restriction, that doesn't fall into our jurisdiction?
Well, it's as the chairman said, it's a factually and legally sensitive topic. So basically, the law says you can't discriminate against renters, and of course, you shouldn't. Most of us at some point in our life have rented, or at some point in our life will rent. So we typically regulate, you know, it's only a single family home, we regulate property maintenance, as the chairman just indicated, we regulate code enforcement, and there have been some relatively recent cases, and we actually have a case pending right now that actually has this as a somewhat related point. So I think the gist of this is, and I don't know where you're going with this as a board, but I think, Mr. Chairman, what you were suggesting is that, I think you're saying that if this is going to be approved, I think one of the conditions is going to be that that restriction will exist, provided for the research reveals that it's constitutionally permitted, and we'll just have to do that.
Correct. I think that would be a safe way to go, is to build it in as we've done in the past,
Right.
but with the recognition that it's potentially a point of contention, and
Right.
a higher court might rule that boards don't have the authority to deed restrict properties.
So, Michael, to your point, yes.
We're not asking for the deed restriction.
Well, right.
They're offering it.
And,
So I think it's different.
and it's going to be very clear that they've offered that, but some of the cases have said, hey, that in itself doesn't make the total distinguishing factor. So the issue is, I'll definitely research, and I'll, assuming that if, for purposes of this discussion, the application is approved, I will have a more definitive answer for you. Hopefully to have a more definitive answer at the next meeting. But again, it's not an easy answer, so
I would, I don't want to influence any other board members in the way that they vote, but I would think that even if the voluntary, which I'm very much in favor of, the voluntary deed restriction, I think we should bake it in there. I don't think your approval or denial of this application should rest on that, because if it does, then I think it's shaky ground, and I just think the vote, you shouldn't factor that into the vote, even if it does become part of the resolution.
Prior to the resolution, I will do an analysis for you for some of the cases. And actually, I think it'll be a good analysis, because it's things that have come up before.
But I don't
and are gonna
know,
come up again.
I'll speak for myself, me as a board member should base my vote on,
Right.
my approval on assuming that's gonna be in there.
Yes, provided it's constitutionally permitted
Right.
for the research, yes.
Right, otherwise we can't vote tonight until he gets an answer.
Correct,
So,
correct. So, I mean, if that's,
you deny the resolution if you find out and
Right.
board members feel like they don't want to approve this without the deed
Right.
restriction.
And Mr. Middleton and I will, for the research, and we will definitely be in
great.
close contact.
Okay. All right, so where were we? Public session, yes.
Good evening.
Just give your name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is Mark Lee. I live at 1705 B Street, which is just across the street from the applicant's property.
All right, good evening and welcome. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
I do.
Thank
You
you.
live way over in Lake Como?
I live way over in
Way over, way west.
way west. Well, thank you for the opportunity to bring your town neighbors in for comment. Question, just listening to the conversation here. Do you guys feel like you can decide this evening? With the,
We're going to open it up for board comment when the public session closes, so you'll get your answer as the board. If the board members choose to comment, you'll hear what they feel about that.
okay, all right. Second, with respect to the issue of rebuilding the house, I heard the question about the ordinance and the reading of the ordinance. Are there any time restrictions on that ordinance at all?
No.
I asked the board.
I don't know if a board member would
Not aware.
qualify to answer that question.
I'm not aware.
There's no time limit that you'd have to rebuild it.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Mr. Kennedy, could you add to your homework list?
Sure.
And we'll just agree that if there is, and this wasn't timely enough, we won't move forward in approving the resolution. I sincerely doubt the time limit has expired, if there is a time limit, because what year did the house burn down?
April 19th.
Of 2019, so it's less than 3 years. I highly doubt that's going to be an issue, because 3 years is certainly reasonable, or I'll bet stretch it, if there is a limit, it's probably over 5.
It was the first issue I looked at. There's no time.
There's no limit at all.
No, that was the first issue.
20 years later.
Which is good.
Okay, well, from the mouth of the lawyer.
Okay, thank you. Question. What does owner occupied really mean? In the sense that, you know, does he have to live there 181 days a year? Can he have multiple guests? Does he have to have a CO to have large numbers of people there? I'm just curious.
These become enforcement matters for the town, code enforcement and police enforcement. It becomes very difficult for us as a board to step into that arena. But it certainly, if there's an overcrowding situation, or if there's a feeling where if there is a deed restriction that's going to be owner occupied and the neighbors find that it isn't, they're going to have an obligation to notify the town. It's not going to be this board's ability or decision. It's going to be, you know, calling code enforcement and pointing out that they're violating some sort of rule, code, rule, restriction, whatever description you want to call it.
Okay, thank you.
It's just like parking your car on the lawn, right? Cops will write a ticket unless a neighbor complains about it.
And, you know, that has happened.
Yeah.
On this property. I would say. So, thank you. We've had discussion about the deed restrictions. This is one of my questions. You all mentioned the Latin term res judicata. Can I ask what that is?
Sure, that's res judicata, and what that means is, I believe, my Holy Cross Grammar School Latin days are way behind me, but
It
it's
raises things.
already adjudicated. And so what that means is, if an application to do A, B, and C was previously brought to this board, and let's just say it was denied, the applicant cannot come back with that same application to do A, B, C unless it's substantially changed. Let's say it was to build a hotel, and the first hotel was 99 stories, which got denied, and the next application for the hotel was only 4 stories. That would be a substantially different application. So that's what that's about. You can't, and it's designed, and the same thing with litigation. If you're in court, you can't come for the, you know, Mr. Mark and I get in a car accident, and I sue him and win, and I sue him because he, you know, we had an accident, I broke my arm, I broke my leg. I can't win, and then come back and say, oh, by the way, I got some head damage too. You want to do things all at once, you have to get it all out at once, so that's the process. We couldn't come back unless, if application were denied, prior application were denied, you can't come back with the same application. And just to bore you, it has to be a substantive determination, and the first application that Mr. Mandia brought was withdrawn without prejudice, so that's procedurally dismissed. So res judicata doesn't apply when the first application was not substantively ruled upon.
All right, thank you. And then, you know, just a couple of notes as a neighbor, you know, that I would welcome new neighbors who live there and, you know, have pride of ownership and, you know, take care of the property. That hasn't been the case in the time that I've been in. Subsequent to the issues about deed restriction, you know, that would be a welcome thing, if it is feasible and constitutional, et cetera. And just as a neighbor, I would not prefer building this house back as it was, because, you know, it's typically been rented. There's been lots of problems in these houses. I would rather see something that conforms to the zoning, that's more of a single-family home, that does not have, you know, the capability for multiple units to be rented. Let's just express it.
If it's of any solace to you, this is one of the most simple designs and minimalist that we've come across in a number of years. This is, you know, just a simple one-story ranch. It's Thank you, appreciate it.
And I'm sorry, how do you spell Claire?
C-L-A-R-E, just like the same.
Okay, and how do you spell your last name?
Hamer, H-A-Y-M-E-R.
All right, good evening, and thank you for attending. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth, to the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Just one quick question to everybody, the best of everybody's knowledge, the tax records are up to date on the Monmouth County website or whatever. So probably, John, why you thought that Lewis may have owned it, it's because the tax records say that your name is on 1710, so maybe you just sold it or a family member, but it says Lewis Mania, 262 Preston Avenue, Staten Island. So that's probably where John's question came from, because it's on the tax.
You're talking about neighboring properties?
Yes, you see that 1710,
I
so.
don't know the relevance, but,
Well,
okay.
I'm just clarifying what
Okay,
John had
yeah,
thought.
okay, yeah.
Okay. And I guess the best thing that I can say, Lewis, if you truly mean that you're going to live there and raise a family like you told us in 2020 you were going to do, okay, then take a look at the house that's being built next to me at 1802 B Street. Okay, they had a front house, they had a back house. The back house was 100 years old. Her great-grandfather built it, knocked it down, and look at the beautiful house that's going up. Okay, just food for thought that if you truly mean you're gonna live there, and you wanna raise a family there, that may be a better option for you. I'm just saying, it's just from what we've seen, okay? We've lived through calling code enforcement on the different things, but it doesn't seem to help. And Frank Sanella's done now, so I don't know what's gonna happen. So, but thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Hamer.
Good evening, Linda Sharkus, 400 4th Avenue. I don't have a problem.
You know, we'll just swear you in. Good evening and welcome. You swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you're providing, will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
So, I know Mr. Maniak was talking about the value of his house and wants to keep the rental and then build something in the front. I don't have a copy of the plans. What are the sizes of the bedrooms? I heard 9 by 10, did I hear
They're
it
under
correct?
10 feet by 10 feet.
So those in my house just became a closet, a hallway, and a small bathroom. I think the size of those bedrooms still lend itself to being a rental because most people would look for bigger space. You can't even put a queen-size bed in a room that size. So from a practical point of view, I'd rather see him put up a second, a dormer up to put a second bathroom. I'm a real estate agent for Wyker. And at least you'll have some value coming out because nobody wants a one-bathroom house. I mean, we lived in a Cape with 1.5, and that was tight when there were 3 girls in our family. So the plan, this won't be your forever home with only 1 bathroom. So I think there should be I would suggest some reconsideration to what you're building, because in this day and age, construction isn't inexpensive. So.
Thank you, Mr. Charkis, appreciate that. Anyone else from the public for this application? None, so we'll close the public session and open up for board comments.
Yeah, I mean, this is, it's under 1,000 square feet, I think, right? 900 something square feet. I think my reading of the statute is he's entitled to build something there to replace what was destroyed in the fire. And what's being asked of us is pretty insignificant. I don't think from a zoning perspective, I would be wise to say what you're building is too small, build bigger. This kind of seems like an easy request to me, so I'm in favor of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Mr. Prater.
I will echo Chuck's remarks and be my intention to vote for it.
Most likely in favor of the application. Just like to make some comments for consideration. improvements to front houses, back house command more rent, right? They get better quality tenants, in my opinion. I think you were premature in offering a voluntary deed restriction on the front house. That's my opinion. You should take into consideration that your immediate neighbors are concerned about their welfare, the welfare of the community, and the fact that there has a tendency to be an uprise there. However, I will caution the public that by making a significant improvement in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range, it's very unlikely that you're going to get an animal house type tenant if it was to ever be rented. But you should make consideration to, especially if you're going to occupy the dwelling, you too will be inconvenienced more so than your neighbors will be, right? I do like the fact that we did not expand upon the existing, if it was 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, in accordance to the ordinance. With your small modifications, you do have the right to rebuild the structure. I think paying better attention to the property and managing it directly, while also making some improvements to your back house, i.e. specifically the porch, which is an eyesore from the street right now, is something that you should probably consider.
Great. Done? Mr. Mario?
Yes, I like the design of the front house. Right now it's an empty lot. I think something built on there would look much more appropriate down the street. I would be, inclined to say I'd like to see that back house at least be completely sided, cleaned up, new porch, if you're gonna do that. And if those things were gonna happen, I would be in favor of the application.
So, yes, and looking at what is under the zoning board's purview, I would agree. I think the modifications you're making is very, suits the property, making very little from what was originally there. I do hear what your neighbors are saying, and as has been voiced before, which is really has nothing to do with this vote for us, because it doesn't apply. But they're your neighbors, you'll be living there. I would certainly hope the investment that you put in there will make you want to make the property that's there. If you are gonna be living there, these are the people that you'll be seeing every day, so, that's outside our purview, but it's always good to have good neighbors.
Thank you, Ms. Dietz. And Mr. Diorio.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is, when you bought the house, or the 2 houses, they were both rental properties, you're putting yourself in the neighborhood in no worse of a situation than when you bought it. And I think you have the right, as the owner, you bought something in 2018, that you should be able to continue, and according to the statute, you are allowed to rebuild the house. I am not concerned about the deed restriction, and that's something nice. To me, it's a bonus, but it's not going to determine my decision.
Great, thank you. So, I just, for one of the public comments, just a response. We do not ask applicants to expand use. So we don't ask them to make it, I think it was Sharkus who mentioned it, we don't ask them to add rooms or add bathrooms or add dormers. I mean, it's typically the other direction that we're taking applications. So I appreciate your comment though, because, this house is so modest, it's almost too modest, right? The bedrooms are almost too small, right, compared to what the typical bills are looking like. But we're not in the business of asking people to go bigger or spend more money, right? But point noted though, because if I were building, I probably would want to go a little more than what's being proposed here tonight. You have pissed off the neighbors in the past, and I think that's why you're getting some of this pushback. So I think there's still a little spillover from what's happened in the past and the problem that the property has been in the past. And it seems like they're getting through it finally, and I think they're also seeing that it is a very modest proposal that you're putting forward here. So I think it's maybe starting to settle down a little bit, but time's going to tell. If you're going to stick to your word, if you're going to live there, and if you're going to keep the property under control, I think things will be fine. If that doesn't happen, then I think think you're gonna have, you know, neighbors come by with pitchforks. So, appreciate the positive criteria with the build that you're doing. Appreciate the offer of the deed restriction, so I would ask that that be included to the degree that Kevin used the right words, that we don't get held accountable for insisting on it, because we certainly didn't insist on it, but we would like that to be reflected since you made the offer. You absolutely have the right to rebuild, and what you're rebuilding is very minor in nature compared to what was there, where most people, when they had the right to rebuild, they would definitely have gone up much higher and built a lot bigger house than what you're doing. So for all those reasons, I would wind up being in favor of this application. So with that, Mr. Kennedy, if you could sum it. Oh, yes, thank you. You know what, you're a good vice chairman, you watch my back. Guys, sorry about that.
I have nothing further. The same thing with the owner occupied deed restriction. He's asking for offer, so we can take it as long as it is constitutional.
Yeah, I've got to say, I was in your shoes in '97. I bought an apartment, well, two-family, front, back, and we were the last summer rental on the block. And my neighbors love me now because we don't do that anymore. The back house is a year-round. You know, it's fixed it up, and we can make good friends that way. So it's my only comment.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy, now.
Yes. Okay, so if the application is, excuse me, going to be approved, I wrote down some notes, we talked about some potential conditions. One, as is standard, the applicant has to comply with all promises, commitments, and representations they made tonight. We typically have a 24-month shelf life on the approvals from the date of the resolution to get the building permits or an agreed-upon extension. We had an extension earlier tonight. Compliance with any affordable housing rules and regulations. Obviously, we need to obtain any outside approvals that are applicable. And then we talked about Joe, I think we said a front yard setback variance not required, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Subject to Ted also agreeing.
Okay. Okay. I'm just gonna write big Ted here, when I call you tomorrow and say, what does this Ted with the circle mean? That's what it means. Compliance with the fire code regulations, because we were talking about that, right, and let's see. We talked about the deed restriction, the voluntary deed restriction, about the owner-occupied nature of that front home, subject to constitutional provisions, which further research. Now, Joe, we talked about plans being revised to reflect an actual lot coverage of.
I recalculated the 73% impervious when including the 50%.
Okay. Air conditioners in a zoning compliant location. Now, just to talk about improvements to the rear dwelling, I think just so that we're all on the same page, we talked about, is it repairing the front porch? Replacing?
Yeah, inside.
Replacing front porch. Now, Tim, is your client okay with that?
He's nodding his head, yes.
Okay, and so that was new siding on the rear dwelling?
Correct.
Okay, and was there anything else? Okay, and then we talked about compliance with any FEMA regulations, I guess,
Utilities.
and utilities. So we're gonna have underground utilities in good faith, working with the applicant himself and the neighbor if that's required, and in good faith. And we typically say, Mr. Chairman, just to report back within 4 to 6 months to the board secretary as to, in writing, what the regulation or what the search has been. I think we said that I guess the stairs to the attic are dropped down. And then, Mr. Chairman, you had said if we have an underground sump pump connection, I'm sorry, if we have an underground sump pump connection, that's got to go into the storm drain.
That should become part of building code. I mean, I sanitary sewer and storm sewer systems. You can't
So I'll
connect to
list that
sanitary sewer.
as a condition?
If they have the ability to connect right now, they should. And we should address that through building code, not through zoning.
Okay. So maybe we'll put that on our annual review list. And then we also, I'll do my homework and come with a legal opinion on the rental restriction. And then I think, well, implicit in this was that it's a three-bedroom home. And it's gonna be occupied as a three-bedroom home. And, let's see. Porch, new siding, okay, we have that, I got that. And again, and this is not a condition, but Mr. Chairman, you said it very eloquently, we as a zoning board are not a penal entity, but I think the applicant's team sort of got the impression that, people are looking, so, obviously, comply with all prevailing regulations, which we think will definitely be done. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a generic list of our exhibit, our conditions. Tim, are you okay with those conditions?
Yeah, no, they comport with what I have in that.
Okay.
Ready for a vote?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Gregg?
Yes.
Mr. Almeida?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Fitzgerald? Mr. Malina?
Yes.
Ms. Deep?
Yes.
Mr. Dior?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good job, guys.
Good.